السلام عليكم جماعة يعطيكم العافية. معاكم Ali Swar from Unreal Bahrain. Um, and welcome to the weekly stream, our news and highlights, and of course, our interview segment of Meet the Devs. Um, Today, I have two special guests with me. Omar Ismail, who's the chairman of the Gulf role-playing community based in Dubai. And I have Nasser Al-Alawi, who's the founder of Tabletop House Bahrain. And he's also a member of the role-playing community based in Dubai. So a lot of things happened this week in terms of news, I would say. Hi Tamar, how you doing? Thank you for joining, bro. Um, Basically, we had the PS5 showcase. Nintendo had a showcase. Um, uh, we're not gonna go in depth with those showcases, but I have a lot of questions for the viewers moving forward, and hopefully once we get to the showcase segment, I can ask these questions and hopefully see uh, what's going on in your mind. So without further ado, we're gonna switch to the interview segment of the program. All right, how you guys doing?
Doing well. How are you?
All good, all good. So I just wanted to thank you guys for taking the time and joining us today in our weekly stream. This stream is mainly has been developed or has been made available for the Unreal Bahrain community, mainly to discuss game development news and upcoming releases and things we can geek about, basically. More or less something that you guys have also done in your community, right? So
Yeah.
this is our version of it. It's pretty nice and small, but it gets the job done. Um, so without further ado, Omar, can you tell us more about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Omar Ismail. I run something called the Gulf Role-Playing Community as the chairman. And what we do is we help people find tabletop and role players to play with throughout the Gulf.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, a long time ago, I was in a group of 5 people, and then one of them left the country, and then another one left the country, and I set up a little booth at the first Middle East Film and Comic Convention,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get a table back up to like 5. And I told people, I think we might even have enough for one group in Abu Dhabi and one group in Dubai. People were like, "You're crazy." But now we have just under 1,000 members,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still going strong. So it worked, and that's what I run.
Awesome. So basically those two people that you mentioned left, and that's what made you start. Like that was the drive to start it. Basically, I need more people to play the role
I
playing
was
games with.
looking. I was looking for basically 2 replacement people, and I got 70 something on the first day.
Wow. Whoa, dude. That was
Yeah. It,
that's interesting.
it wasn't even a plan. It wasn't even a plan to have a community, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It was a plan to just have like a table and like invite 2 more people.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was looking at my like sign up sheet, I was like, oh, I need what am I gonna do? I need a website. I need a group. I need a mailing list. How am I gonna talk to all these people? But we sorted it out in the end, and it's gone from strength to strength.
That's amazing. And Nasser, tell us a bit about yourself.
I'm Nasser Khalid Al-Alawi. I am a co-founder of Tabletop House Bahrain and a GRC Gulf Role-Playing Community committee member.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very proud of that. Well, what can I say? 20 years ago, a friend of mine talked to me and said, "Do you want to come try this game that I'm about to run?" I said, "What are you running?" He said, "Something called Dungeons and Dragons." So I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll give it a shot. But what do you play in it?" He said, "You play wizard." I was like, "No, I don't like wizards. You play thieves. You play." When he got to barbarian, at that time I was a fan of Conan.
Mm-hmm.
So when he said barbarian, that's when it sparked my interest, and that's when I got into that world of role playing, basically.
So the barbarian was the key
Yeah.
to
The moment he
accessing that
said
world.
barbarian, that sparked my interest. Like I was like, yeah, I like this.
Yeah, I mean, like I imagine when somebody mentions barbarian, it's either like there are two images in my head, right? It's either something like Conan the Barbarian, or something like Xena.
Yep,
So,
that's what I was thinking, Conan, because I grew up on the Arnold Schwarzenegger films in the
yeah.
'80s. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was it for me.
Interesting. Um, I just want to make sure, Yousef, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Cool. I just wanted to make sure that you're still with us because your video feed just got cut from my side.
Oh,
Um, no worries. So you kind of you both of you kind of mentioned how you guys started your journey over here. Um, I'm just curious about Nasser's journey a bit. So the barbarian piqued your interest. What got you from, a low, basically a solo barbarian to a community? How did that jump happen?
Well, what happened was after that we played like a very long campaign, and then I had stopped playing for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I decided to go back to it, I noticed that, hey, we don't have a dungeon master, and the only uh, group that plays are a closed group. There are groups that play in behind, but they're kind of fragmented. They were fragmented at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked my cousin to become the dungeon master, and he said yes. And so he ran us for a while, and until I decided one day, why don't I order Pathfinder? We should check that out as well.
Mm-hmm.
I had just ordered like $1,000 worth of D&D and Pathfinder books, and then I go up to my cousin and I'm like, "Can you run us in a Pathfinder game?" He said, "Sorry, I have university and I have to pull out of the campaign." And I was sitting there left with all those books that I bought, and then I was like, "How hard can this be?" And I've been playing for a long time. Why shouldn't I give it a chance? So from there, I ran like a little campaign,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I noticed that some of the players had left the country.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with our story. People just leave the country. Uh, I started looking for people, and I think the only way, and I thought about it, I was like, the only way to get people or find them is in a convention, and especially has to be a geek convention. So 2016 in the IGN convention, that's when me, a friend of mine, Ahmed Bayat, we decided to, uh, between both of us, let's get some D&D books, let's buy a ton of dice, get a table, and sell that stuff there. And that's probably how we'll get people. And we did that. We actually went to a dice company, ordered like a huge amount of dice, and we got it to Bahrain. We ordered D&D books, had them in Bahrain, and that's when people started taking interest in that particular convention, where we started signing up names, and it started from there. And that's it. That's where it went. But what actually piqued my interest before all of that was the Gulf role playing community.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to Facebook, I'm like, I have to find a community in Bahrain, and I never found one. So I found Gulf role playing community, and I joined it, and I saw what the work that they were doing, and I was like, wow, I want this for Bahrain.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started the community inspired by Gulf role playing community.
I see. That's
Yeah.
that's
So
that's great.
yeah.
Um, well, shifting back to Omar. Um, so, from 0 to 70, that's a huge leap. And you mentioned, the challenges that goes with such a leap. From that time till now, like, what do you think? What are the things that you have had to adapt to keep the community thriving?
Well, our general ideas have changed about kind of what we are. Uh, we set up the committee shortly before the second Middle East Film and Comic Con convention.
Mm-hmm.
where we basically took key members in the community, and we all got together to kind of make decisions about. So it's not just me, making decisions for the whole community. So we started to make decisions about what it is exactly we were doing, because when it started out, I was running 2 to 3 or even 4 games a week, and I wanted to make sure that we didn't lose any of that kind of 70. And we lost a few of those anyway, but I wanted to make sure that everybody who wanted to have a game had a game, to kind of keep the community together as it kind of built up momentum, right? So I was running games with 14 people in them, which, if you've ran role-playing games, you know that realistically 5 is your ideal size. Yeah. It starts to become unplayable at about 8. And I was running 14-person games. And part of the reason for that was just to make sure that, look, there are people here who are interested and who want to play, and I don't want to be turning anyone away. But then we started getting into, okay, we need to now be someone or a group that puts other groups together. We need to make sure that people can talk to each other, not just talk to us and we talk back to them. This is when we started doing things like we set up the Facebook group and things like that. We already had, and it kind of naturally evolved where our Facebook group was the best medium, because every other social media tends to be top down, where people can talk to us and we can talk to them. But we really needed something where the community could talk to each other, and Facebook was at the time the best medium for it, which is why our Facebook is the biggest social media platform we use. We do have a Twitter, we do have an Instagram, a YouTube page, etc., but none of them do the function that the Facebook group does, which is allowing people to have games with each other. And what's really changed for me is now when I go to our conventions, I don't recognize the people there, or I don't recognize all the people there, right? Because what used to happen was every convention we'd set up, and I'd sit there and it would all be people who were playing in my games, or I was playing in their games, or at the very least there was one degree of separation. But as the community's kind of grown, each convention now we see at least 2/3 of the people are people who've used our platform or used our Facebook group or whatever it is to find each other, and we haven't had to be kind of the administrators of that, which is what we really want. We want people to be playing role-playing games. It's not for us to kind of gatekeep or anything like that. And that seems to be the case now, and it's working really well.
That's really cool. Did you guys branch out to a Discord server, or you guys never?
We do have. No, we do have a Discord now, but it's quite new, so it doesn't have 1,000 people. I actually don't know how many people it has, but it's much smaller. I'd be surprised if it was. I'd be very surprised if it was like 200 people. You're looking at maximum 100.
It's surprising because Discord has become sort of the hub for a lot of. For video games for the large part, but even for tabletop games, from what I've seen, I see people who are on video game groups now run tabletop campaigns on their Discord, and it's pretty interesting because each of them will use a different software to basically put the pieces around, and like the game master will sort of share the screen with them, and we'll start telling them what's going on. And you'll have people that basically either created characters before, which is something really interesting. And I wanted both of you guys your insight on this. When somebody joins a campaign, do you expect them to be like fully versed of what's going on, or do you like, okay, you're a beginner, you're a newbie, just have a goblin and listen to what's going on? By the third game, you can actually make a decision. I don't know how you guys go about it.
I do say that if anyone wants to, a lot of people ask if they can just sit in and just watch and not participate for the first couple of sessions. And that's one of the few things I will just say no to. You can't just sit in. I will give you a character. I will give you a very simple character. I don't expect you to know any of the rules. and you can just play along. Just tell me what your character does, right? And we can work through it.
I see.
Right. So it's really not a problem if there are new players. What I usually say is if we have a convention coming up, before they join a game, I will say, and this is if if there's a convention in like 2 weeks time or like 3 weeks time, I'll tell them, why don't you go to the convention first? Because then you can join a one-off, see how you like it, try a couple of different systems, see whose DMing style you like, and then you can join a game that you're going to like. One of the key things, one of the reasons we still do these conventions, still during Corona, we've been on a little bit of a hiatus for in-person conventions, but we're still doing e-conventions. But part of the reason we wanted to do them is so that players could meet DMs and players could meet players. Because that's actually a very important step, because you don't know who you're going to get along with, which players click with which other players, whose DMing style you like, etc. And those are actually bigger decisions, I think, than whether or not you're going to be kind of into the system. Because most people can pick up a system within a couple of weeks, I would say, and it's not usually a big deal.
I gotcha.
I agree with everything that Amal said.
Great.
That's what happens usually.
Yeah. As I said, like I've never played a game myself. I've always sat in on games. I've never attempted because I don't know anything. Like I don't know as much as they know about the lore, and it's like me stepping mid-campaign. It's like, hey guys, what are you doing? And they're really like, well, we're in the middle of the campaign, so it's like, yeah, sure, I'll just like listen. It's not a problem. But I understand now. If they're mid-campaign, I just should leave, kind of thing.
The first game I ever played was actually Ravenloft, which is behind me here somewhere. Which is the first. Which is the first first in-person game I ever played. Like I told you off stream, I actually got into role-playing via the video game, so I played a lot of those. And when they told me, do you want to join and try out role-playing, I had the same worries, right? I think a lot of people do, where they're like, I don't really know the system. I'm not sure. You guys will know a lot more than me. I don't want to interrupt. I don't want to do the wrong thing. I don't want to be a burden. There's a lot of those kind of feelings that go with it. I'm a very geeky guy. So what I did is I bought a lot of the books, like Nasa did, and I borrowed some, and I had some already, and I just burned through, I think, something like 70 rule books.
Oh, wow.
In the weeks leading up to the first game. And when I showed up, they were very helpful. They were very nice to the new beginner. And they did the whole, why don't you give making a character a shot? And if you need any help, we'll be here to help you. And I was just like, I made a Henji Yokai tattooed monk, and I've optimized it as much as I think I can, but I don't know if I can do it any more than that. And the DM is just like, okay, what are all of those words? I'm just like, oh, well, if you look at this like splat book, this is from Oriental Adventures. That's where the Henji Yokai is. Yeah. And the Tattooed Monk, I'm actually using the additional rules. I'm not using the standard ones because those are from 3.0, but they've actually updated it for 3.5. Everyone was just like, you don't need to be this prepared. It's fine.
Yeah.
Get over it.
Like sometimes I think people, like if you're joining a new campaign or you're joining someone who's invited you to a campaign, you should basically prepare a character who's that could evolve. Like it makes the job on the dungeon master easier to guide you through a way that your character could evolve in. But I was always curious about the dungeon master's brain, basically, or like the lore master in that sense. Do you basically look at the characters beforehand, or like you sit down at the day of the campaign and basically everybody gives you their character sheet and they say, okay, now where are we gonna go? What are you guys' opinion? Like, are you like the kind of person who's gonna prepare way ahead of time, or just like gonna sit at the campaign? It's like, okay, your character sheets, please. Let's get this running.
I always work with my players to help them develop their characters so that it fits within the setting.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say honestly famously permissive when it comes to characters.
Mm-hmm.
The first campaign I ever ran, my brief to the players was, bring me a character that another DM has said you are not allowed to play. That is the only rule. um, but make it a character that you do really want to play.
All right.
Right? So that's it's not a silly character, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just I'm playing a barbarian, but he's wearing a tutu. Ha 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 ha. Ha.
Yeah.
That joke is gonna get old real
Mhm.
quick, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there were interesting characters that were just out there for whatever reason. So one of the players who came to me said, "I want to play a dog who's been awakened by a druid." I was like, okay.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And I was veering on this is sounding a bit tutu, but all right, I'll
Give it a
I
shot,
did say
yeah.
give me a character.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, here's my backstory.
Mm-hmm.
I was a farm dog who was incredibly loyal to my master. My master got affected with the plague, and he essentially gave away all his other animals.
Mm-hmm.
But as his dog, I wouldn't leave his side, etc. And as a reward for being a loyal servant for all these years, etc., he pays a druid with the remainders of his life saving
Mm-hmm.
to awaken his last companion, to give him sentience and tell him be on his way and to live his best life before he dies. And it's like single tier, just like
Yeah.
okay, you can play him, you know. But that's an interesting character, and when you give people a shot at it,
Mm-hmm.
I think they don't want to ruin this chance.
Yeah.
Right. So he's like, okay, Omar has been good to me and has said I can play this character, and I've wanted to play this character for like 5 campaigns, and 5 different DMs have said no, and now I get to do it justice. Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I'm very permissive with any characters, but I think it still needs to be collaborative, just so that you can
Mm-hmm.
tweeze out and fit them in the setting.
Mm-hmm.
Because when he said that and said my master got very sick, I knew that there was a very specific area where there was a blight. There was
Yeah.
something happening in that area, and that let me weave his character into the plot.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so he came not just from anywhere, but he came from that area, and that area is now devastated by plague, and that's a big part of the campaign in 6 months' time.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and the same with all of the other characters. Famously, I had one player who couldn't decide on a character, and he is responsible for about 50% of all of my world building, because he said, oh my god, I want to play a minotaur. And I'm like, okay, I don't have minotaurs, but I guess I can introduce minotaurs. Where would they live? Oh, they'd probably live in the Adamantine Hills. Okay, so there's a minotaur encampment there. What's that culture like? What's this? And I went through all of it, and then he goes, actually, I want to play an orc. Like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
I'm keeping the minotaurs, but the orcs, they live in the forests. They're this, they're that. This is who they interact with. This is the trade routes they have. They're enemies of these people, but the barbarian tribes to the north, they don't.
Mhm.
It's like, oh wait, I want to play a knight. The knights, they live in the human kingdom.
Yeah.
But like, it just expanded my world actually quite a bit.
Mhm.
So now I have a place where necromancers are, a place where orcs are, a place where minotaurs are, a place where centaurs are, and it's all because this guy decided. Well, because this guy didn't decide what he wanted to
yeah.
play.
That's really
Sure.
really
Yeah.
interesting.
Honestly, you have the patience of an angel.
Yeah. I mean, after the first one, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna.
Yeah,
do it.
session zero.
Yeah.
Session zero. It's what Amar was talking about was session zero, and it's really important to know your players, the players that you're going to be playing with,
Mhm.
before actually starting the campaign, because sometimes personalities don't fit or style of play doesn't fit. Like somebody, like for example, somebody who's very story oriented, sometimes not work with somebody who's combat oriented. There's nothing wrong with both styles. It's just that sometimes you can't balance the two together.
Mhm.
And rare occasions.
Actually, this is quite interesting. I mean, the insights that I'm getting in from both you, Nasser and Umar, it's that Dungeons and Dragons is more about managing players and story and making sense of this entire world, which is quite a challenge in my opinion. It's not something that's simple. That's really simply done. I mean, I'm sure at one point you thought about the orcs or necromancers or minotaurs biology and what they need to survive and their culture and even their territories and who are they in combat with.
Yeah.
So how much reading did you have to do and how much imagination? I mean, are you sticking to certain rules, or sometimes you do have to make new rules and new stories and new and newly, special conditions to make things fit?
Yeah, that's like in my opinion, that's a dangerous
What's
thing
the
to
thought
do.
process behind
Like
it?
opening up and say, okay, there are no rules anymore, kind of like breaks the jar kind of thing. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
It's
Ramai.
like.
Well,
Go ahead,
it
Emma.
depends on the game, right? So that was my first campaign world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the one I've ran for the longest. So it's the one I'm still running now. We've had 4 seasons of it, I would say. And each season tends to take a year, and then I'll take a break and I'll run something else. So right now I'm running kind of a secret world campaign with conspiracy theories and kind of a cross between X-Files and a little bit of like Shadowrun.
All right.
So both magic and sci-fi and conspiracy theories are all a little bit real, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm much more restrictive in this game than I was in my previous campaign world, because that campaign world is built to adapt to all of those different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
There's a key city, or sorry, a key empire in the first campaign world that I call Alayth, and it's actually based on a book that me and my wife were writing together.
Okay.
When we were doing long distance dating. She's American, I'm Emirati.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were talking online and dating that way, we basically, as part of the things we used to do, was we used to write together.
All right.
We came up with this fantasy setting, and in that fantasy setting, it was very very fantastical, etc. And that allowed me to use this setting as somewhere where the awakened dog could exist alongside a minotaur, and it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case for the entire campaign world,
Mm-hmm.
but it gave everyone a place where, okay, you know what? If you come from this city, there is a campaign / backstory reason why that's fine,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Gotcha.
You can't do the same thing in every setting. So if I'm running a setting which is more kind of traditional, if I'm running something like Star Wars or Star Trek, and you tell me that you are an alien race who is at war with the Federation, I will not allow it. I will not allow you to be part of the Federation as an alien race who's not part of the Federation.
Yeah.
It starts to simplify.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it makes sense within the
great
setting, I like to give my players as much freedom as possible. One other thing I'll do in the kind of conversations we have, by the way, sometimes I might be fine with it, but actually I want to make sure that the player is fine with his own character,
Mm-hmm.
because it might be that he wants to play his character a certain way, and the setting might not allow it. The setting, if you want to play a samurai, I'll allow a samurai, but if you want to play a samurai because you want a certain level of respect from the peasantry,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? You might not get it if that's not what the campaign world is like.
Yeah.
You want to be in feudal Japan,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you're not in feudal Japan, people won't treat you like you're a samurai in feudal Japan.
Mm-hmm.
They'll treat you like you're a samurai in New York City.
Nobody cares.
it-
Yeah, exactly.
No,
Yeah.
well, they'd care a bit, but they'd care differently, right? So, do you really want to play that character in this campaign? Also, if the campaign is going to be more combat oriented, more investigative,
Mm-hmm.
more horror, etc., do you still want to play the fighter?
Mm-hmm.
Do you still want to play the barbarian, or do you want to play the investigator, given that the setting is different?
Mm-hmm.
You also have to walk him through kind of, well, that's fine. You're playing a samurai, but bear in mind, one of the other players is playing a dragon. You are going to get outshone in combat,
Yep.
right?
Pretty much.
Are you okay with that? If you are okay with that, that's fine. I haven't actually had a player play a full dragon, but that was just an example that came to my mind.
Oh,
Right?
like.
But if there's some kind of imbalance,
Mm-hmm.
right? where what do you actually want to be? Do you want to be the hero? Because I have 4 other players who want to play the hero. If
Pretty
that's
much,
not
yeah.
going to fulfill your kind of the reason you're playing this character in this game, maybe you want to play something else.
Gotcha.
Right. So there's a lot of things to consider beyond just do I want them to play that character. There's how is that player going to feel playing that character in this campaign, in this setting, with these people.
What do you
That's
think?
what gets Yousef intrigued in this, is because when game developers go through the same process, I think when they try to make worlds for their video games.
Oh, see, an interesting fact. There's something that always accompanies a game developer. If you want to develop games, it's called a game design document. So basically, what you do with that is you balance and you put basically everything you want to put in a game in that game design document. So it's like if you want your character to jump, if you want your character to perform melee attacks, projectile attacks, stuff like that. And you add descriptions like, okay, we are gonna play as a magician who has trained in basically something like Doctor Strange, training in a monastery where he can do close combat and do magic. So, okay, what are his abilities? What are the things? What are his limitations? What's the in-game economy gonna be like? What will affect the character that you're playing? Like, is he gonna have mana points? Is he gonna have health points? Is he gonna require to reach a certain level to use certain aspects? And that on its own is a fascinating progress. But what I'm seeing here is, I mean, you've been running these games for a long time. I mean, I've known Nasser for almost 4 years now.
Yeah.
And Omar, you're saying that you've been doing D&D for how many years? Close to 30? Sorry.
No, not 30. That would have started me at
20?
6.
Okay, sorry. Close to 20?
Yeah, 15 years at least.
15 years.
If you count,
Wow, 15.
if you count video games, then yeah, it would be close to 30.
Yeah.
Okay, but and you run sessions and you do these things, and basically you take it upon yourself to have others enjoy. I mean, what's driving you to do all of this? You know, what's the passion behind it? I would really love to know.
I ask myself the same question every time I have to deal with players.
Why?
No, but I think to an extent, I'm a performer at heart anyway. So I did 10 years of stand-up comedy as well. Stand-up comedy, improvisational comedy, and I taught for 2 years, I think, improvisational comedy techniques and things like that. So I love the art of storytelling, irrespective of kind of what
you certainly have the voice for it, by the way.
Thank you.
Almost like a David. You have this David Attenborough voice mixed in with something else. I don't know what it is.
Well, thank you very much. But I like storytelling in general in lots of different ways. I love, and I think that gaming and video gaming are very underutilized as a kind of medium in which to tell stories. Less so now. Now, people are kind of picking the ball up a little bit more since the days of Pong and Mario, right? Yeah. In fact, even Mario is a huge step forward from, from Pong. Yeah. But now people are starting to talk about game design and storytelling in ways that are very interesting, right? So even when it comes to how does a game mechanic make you feel, right? I ran a game at a convention. I was talking about Doctor Who systems earlier, and I ran a game at a convention where you could do lots of different actions in a role-playing game like normal, but you have 4 stacks or 4 stats, and you can do more of one action than another, right? Yeah. But they were specifically ordered. So you could do things which were clever first, right? Charming first, clever second, cowardly third, and cruel fourth, right?
Okay.
And you don't have hit points. You just have actions. And it's based on cards. So you would draw out 12 cards. You put as many in as many stacks as you want, right? So you divide that up however you like.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you do an action, you draw a card. If you win, you keep the card. If you lose, you throw the card away. And that's like your hit points.
Gotcha.
Now, the reason that I did this is because in Doctor Who, nobody dies from losing hit points.
Yeah.
Right? People in Doctor Who, terrible things happen to them when they run out of options.
Okay.
Right? And this is meant to give you that feeling where you start to run out of options. You can literally see these actions that you can do diminish every time you fail. So when you do something clever, if you keep doing clever things, eventually you'll run out of clever things to do. So then you start trying to charm your way out of it, and eventually you'll run out of charming things to do, and you'll start doing cowardly things. So once those cowardly things start, then, you know, at first you're like trying to talk your way through things, then you're trying to think your way through things, and then you're trying to get away. So now you're running and hiding, and occasionally maybe you'll close the door when somebody else is still on the other side of it, right? And then eventually you get to the very end, and the only thing you have left, and this is very in keeping with Doctor who is supposed to be essentially a terrible person who's, well, a terrible being trying to be good, right? But eventually he runs out of options that he has, right?
Yeah.
And so do you. You become a worse and worse person as the game progresses until all you have left. And by the way, you lose when any of the stacks run out. So that means that you might have a clever option you can do, but you might not want to use that last card you have.
True.
So you start to act a little bit more cowardly and a little bit more cruel before you maybe needed to.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Just to save yourself.
I get it.
So that as a mechanic, so that as a mechanic, I think fits in very well with kind of the ethos and the kind of the way the story is put together in Doctor Who. And I tried to match that in the game by taking that mechanic and forcing people to feel terrible about themselves as they play this game.
This brings a really interesting question, and that has to do with the human psychology. Do you believe that, you know, the people that play these D&D games, do their actual personalities show in these games?
I would say yes and no.
So.
I
It's a big yes for me, from what I've seen, definitely.
Well, I would say absolutely yes. I agree with that. But I would say that the people you play aren't necessarily who you really are or anything like that. So for me, I think it shows my personality because every character I play, I wanted to be completely different from the last character I played, right? Which I think shows my personality because I'm quite, I'm a little bit ADHD. I love new ideas. I'm quite a curious person, right? I like to explore new things. So I'm going to sit there and say like, okay, I played a barbarian. What's a wizard like? Okay, I played a wizard. What's a cleric like? Oh wow. Okay, so a rogue. So I've done all that stuff. Now I'm going to try and be sneaky and oh, I wonder if I can be a more deceptive character. I want to try and So that appeals to me, and that kind of shows my personality. But that doesn't mean that I am the paladin and the rogue and the and the necromancer and whoever else. It just shows my personality comes out in different ways.
So what's the most interesting thing that happened in a D&D match? In a D&D game, sorry.
In a D&D game, I mean, some of the things that happen are the result of kind of entire campaigns, right? Entire campaigns of lead up into something.
Okay.
I remember I had. So I was. This will give. Like I said, I like to play different characters.
Yeah.
I was playing a cat based on Schrodinger's cat.
Okay.
Who was
Puss in Boots,
I was
fine. I
playing-
mean, like, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of Puss in Boots. But I took it. I made him a necromancer,
Yeah.
and I made him undead. So Schrodinger's cat, who you don't know is alive or dead.
It's like the Lich King,
Yeah.
but the cat version.
Yeah, exactly, right. So it was a character called Owen,
Okay.
Okay.
named after Erwin Schrödinger,
Mhm.
and
Okay.
and it wasn't so much any of his abilities or anything like that, but he was a very shy. His full name was Owen Frigatus, and Frigatus is Latin for stutterer.
Okay.
So
Okay.
so he was a stuttering, shy, nerdy necromancer.
Mhm.
Who may be dead and might not be dead cat.
Exactly. Right? And I worked with the GM to build this character in his own homebrew system, and we
Mhm.
built him so that he had very low hit points,
Okay.
but he had 9 lives,
Mhm.
Okay.
so he could come back 9 times.
Pretty good.
Which meant it was very risky whenever he went in danger, because he could die and lose 1 life permanently, but he always came back, right?
Mhm.
But so the thing that happened, which I really liked, was at some point, everyone else in the party was stuck, right? And they needed a way out. And he was the only one who managed to get away because of his small size, etc. And he had a familiar. The familiar I had was a mud skipper. Right, so a little fish.
Mhm.
And I found the bad guys who who were on a ship and had the other players with them. And I go into this monologue where this kind of repressed, shy, stuttering necromancer basically loses it, right? And he's just tired of it all. And these 2 characters who managed to subdue the rest of the party and are powerful beings in their own right, I can't fight them on my own. But I'm hiding in the shadows, and I'm giving this speech, which is just like, people are always telling me not to do things,
Mhm.
and they're like, "Shut up, cat. Don't tell me to shut up." They're always telling me what I can and can't do. Owen, don't play with your food. Owen, don't raise that. They don't like it. Owen, don't do this. Owen, don't do that. And I started listing off things that had happened in the campaign.
Mhm.
You know, Owen, you can't keep body parts in the house. Owen, you can't raise the dead. Owen, and I kept naming them, and all the players were like, I remember that. And it was
Yeah.
kind of a comedic bit, but done in a
Mhm.
serious tone, so you could take it either way.
Yeah.
And they remembered everything I did until the last thing I said, which was, Owen, don't give the mud skipper the storm giant strength potion. And all the players looked at each other like, I don't
What?
remember him doing that. Do you
Yeah.
remember when he did that?
Which is he gonna do
At
now?
which
Basically.
point,
Yeah.
my fish rams the ship with all the strength of a storm giant. And I managed to free the entire party, as the 2 much more powerful beings than me have to save their ship from sinking because I fed a full portion of storm giant strength to a fish. That's one of my favorite moments in role playing.
It's.
I really love.
It
I
is
really love this
amazing.
story. Yep.
Yeah, it's a very nice. I mean, like, your building of the character to begin with was a very interesting choice, and to have like sort of a wacky way of kind of saving the situation is definitely something that I think. Most of the people in the campaign didn't expect the fish to save everybody anyway, but to actually do, you've done something that nobody
Well
else
played.
thought about. It's like, wait, did that happen? I think that's a great moment right there.
Well, it's also, I do want to add that is the kind of thing where the reason that I love tabletop in comparison to video games, right?
Mhm.
Now, like I said, I love video games, but there is that one element of like absolute freedom that you have in tabletop games, where you can do that one really off the wall thing, which especially because I play a lot of role playing video games as well. When I'm stuck in a role playing game on the computer, there's a very frustrating feeling when I can think of a way around this,
but you can't do it because like it's
You know,
against the
Yeah.
rules.
but I
Yeah.
can't do it,
Mhm.
right?
I get you.
Oh,
That's the reason I actually stopped.
Yeah.
Because of role-playing games, I don't play much video games because I
well,
can do more in role-playing games. But yeah, I would play video games from time to time.
Mhm.
so my wife actually remade all of Icewind Dale in the Neverwinter Nights engine. And when she did that, one of the things that she did is she allowed you to she expanded it and allowed you to join up with I forget his name, but he's the one in Icewind Dale who first lets in all the goblins into the camp. Um, because you confront him at some point and you can only fight him. You have to play the good guys.
Mhm.
But she essentially built the whole Icewind Dale and then also built an entirely different arc where you play the bad guys by joining up with him at the beginning. Um, and I think that was just one of her like, well, if I'm allowed to play an evil character,
Mhm.
why am I still taking the kind of hero's path? Right? Because in Icewind Dale you can pick evil characters. You can design them to be the bad guys. You can choose an alignment and say, I am an evil character.
Mhm.
And then somebody comes to you and says, I'm doing this for money and for glory and etc. And you go, no, I will not stand for this. Why? Right? Your backstory is you're a pirate. Why?
Yeah. Why wouldn't you do that?
Why are
Yeah.
you the good guy
Yeah.
now?
Exactly.
So yeah, she built that whole arc around it as well, which is what I'm saying, right? There are always these things which you can just like,
Mhm.
even if it's just like, actually, I'm okay with this.
Mhm.
I don't want to fight this guy. I agree with him,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
or at least my character.
No,
You got
that's
more choice and
Yeah.
more choices in
That-
role-playing games.
That's that. Well, for me personally, like when Amar was talking, like the only thing I could remember in my head is like my campaign in Divinity 2 Original Sin 2, and how much time that was wasted. If I could just do something else and like sort of deflate the situation instead of it escalating on its own. It's like I didn't do anything. Like I'm just sitting here and I'm getting bashed by like the other person that entered the room, and now I'm a traitor. I'm like, dude, I haven't done anything. Like there was no build up for this. But I completely get it. I think it does give you much choice, but then again, there is something about understanding consequences in these kind of settings as well. So for me, honestly, like maybe because I didn't get the opportunity to be part of a campaign and kind of play with those rules, I think having a consequence system in video games definitely makes me rethink my choices. What's the consequences in tabletop games, in your opinion? Like the things that you have developed as consequences for people that played with you throughout the years?
I think as long as you have a certain level of people talk about realism in games, what they almost always mean is something called verisimilitude,
Okay.
which is just realism within the setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you think if okay, so Superman is ridiculously strong, right?
Yep.
It's not realism that he can pick up a plane or that he can fly or anything like that. But if you already accept that he's ridiculously strong and immune to everything and etc., and all of a sudden he gets captured by like what's it called, a regular net,
Yeah.
and he's like, oh no, it doesn't break the realism, it breaks basically the verisimilitude.
Yeah.
Version. I'm not.
Yeah, it is it's also breaking the emotion, yeah, and it's very similar. But if you have that level of kind of immersion and realism and verisimilitude, you can then impose penalties on your players, which makes sense, right? So if they are, the phrase in role-playing games is murder hobos, where they basically just, someone tries to arrest them, they kill those
them,
people.
yeah.
It just escalates forever,
Mhm.
right? Like GTA, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
First you fight the first police, then you fight the SWAT teams, then you fight the military. There's a very quick escalation in that regard.
And sometimes it's just from police to military without like depending on the
Yeah,
action,
exactly.
of course. But yeah, it just escalates real fast.
Yeah, which is not quite the verisimilitude you're going for, but things like that will, to an extent, happen, right?
Mhm.
If you are terrible people, you are going to have consequences to this. I have a better example of when I was a player, or rather than when I was a DM.
Mhm.
And actually, it was in a Vampire the Masquerade game.
Sweet.
We were playing in the Middle Ages,
Mhm.
and yeah, I was playing a vampire in town, and one of the other players was playing a vampire as well, and he got stopped by some guards, and he attacked them. I ran out to see what was happening, recognized the guy as being in my party, and tried to like help by basically saying, okay, let's get out of here. I'll distract the townspeople who are coming with like pitchforks and lit what do they call, torches,
Mhm.
as they come out. And he said to the DM, "Oh, no, I stopped to drain the blood of one of the gods."
Huh?
And the DM says, "Okay, this will take you minutes. Like the townspeople will be here."
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do it anyway." Okay, so he's drinking the blood, and I'm, as the character, saying, "Stop that! Get out of here! What are you doing?" The townspeople eventually come close enough, and I say to the DM, "Well, can they see me?" And he says, "Yeah, they can see you now. Will they recognize me? Are they close enough to recognize me?" He says, "Yeah, that's how close they are."
Yeah, well,
Okay. I stab my friend, and I go, "I have slain the foul beast." Right?
yeah, I mean, it works in my book. I
And
mean,
those are the consequences, because I couldn't think of any way of. Now, in Vampire the Masquerade, vampires don't die if you don't stab them with like a wooden stake.
yeah,
So I knew he was going to like come back to life effectively. He was just in something called Torblock.
yeah,
But it was the only way I could think of saving him, and also saving myself.
true.
Right?
Mhm.
And those are legitimate consequences. And for some reason, he was upset about it. And I was like, well, I don't know.
I kind of saved
This
you.
was not just best for me, but also best for you. And I don't know how to make you see that.
I think you actually played the vampire the right way. I think that's how a vampire in that situation that wants to save its comrade would act. I think that's a genius solution in my opinion. I don't know why you didn't like it, but it's a genius solution.
Can I ask a question about this situation? So in Vampire the Masquerade, there is a frenzy gauge. Is that a thing? Where it's like the vampire cannot control himself to actually get the blood. So, where?
That was not the case.
Oh, okay.
If
It was
that
just
the
like,
case,
you know what? I just want to sip this blood for a couple of minutes. Like I don't care about the consequences kind of situation. Gotcha.
Yeah, no, that was not the case. I would have been a lot more forgiving if that was the case.
Yeah.
I might have still stabbed him, but I would have been forgivingly stabbing him, as opposed to cathartically stabbing him.
Yeah.
That was like a genius way to save it, like him and you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did the GM reward you for it?
I think I got some bonus XP for it. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, you deserve it.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll shift gears a bit over here and go to one of the main things that we discussed pre-stream. What do you think about Hollywood and video game IPs coming to tabletop games? We discussed briefly basically having tabletop games becoming video games, but the other way around seems to be missing something. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think one of the things I was saying earlier before we were on stream was the role-playing games rely a lot more on just the setting, right? Because role-playing games aren't necessarily about replaying a story that you've seen, whereas video games tend to follow something along those lines. And I think the best, but actually, yeah, I think even the best video games from movie adaptations tell a different story or a different part of the story that you haven't already seen. because part of the joy of a video game is the fact that you have another layer of agency, another layer of being able to do what you want, a layer of control. And I would say that actually tabletop has, that one step further as well. So, like I said before, Star Wars, for example, has an excellent role-playing system built around it, because the setting is actually really well developed, and is, whether you consider it well developed or not is actually a little bit debatable in some circles, but you can run a lot of stories in that world. You can visit planets that are only just mentioned in the Star Wars films or in the comics and etc., the expanded universe. And you can take it to a whole different level. You can run entirely different scenarios that don't even touch what any of the films are about. Which actually, I think, to an extent, we're now seeing with some of the later movies, like what's it called? Rogue. Is it Rogue One? Anyway,
Rogue One is kind of a split, like a side story from the main Star Wars, kind of like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it is the one I'm thinking of. But that's what I mean, right? So that could have been a role-playing, maybe not campaign, but a few sessions in a role-playing game, right? Where you've taken the main story, the main world, etc., and you run something kind of parallel to it or alongside it. I think that would have worked great as a video game, and it also works great as a role-playing game. And the system built around it is also, really fun to play in. On the other hand, there are a lot of other movies where the setting isn't the point, the story is the point.
Yeah.
And that is very difficult to translate into a role-playing game. So if you take something like, if you take Batman, that's fine. You get to make some sort of superhero. You play in Gotham. It could work as a role-playing game. Same with something like Judge Dredd, right? Because the setting works. But I would say something like Joker. I don't see how that really plays into a role-playing game, because this is like Joker takes place where you don't really see much of the superhero element of it, right? So you just see, what would you do if you're not actually playing Joker in a translation of the Joker movie? You're just a guy in New York.
Yeah, I mean,
no interest in that.
Yeah, but I mean, like, then again, I haven't basically watched the Joker movie, the latest Joker movie, so I'm just throwing out something that just came to my head. But the background is still Gotham. I'm just like, when you think about it that way, that world still exists. So whether you're like a chaotic,
I agree 100%, which is why I was doubting myself. But the reason I kept going was I felt like because you don't see any of that superhero element of it, the world of Joker doesn't really have any of the bells and whistles, right? That you would expect in a Gotham game. You could definitely have a Gotham setting though. That would work. But you would expect to have interactions with the kind of the villains gallery, right?
The Penguin.
Even if you're not playing them, even if you don't interact with them directly, them being on the surface and you just playing like maybe a goon, right? Who's ultimately working for the Riddler, for example.
Yeah.
That could be a really interesting game, but having you just be a guy, I'm not sure what element that plays into.
No,
unless you're running the actual story. But this is the thing: unless you're playing as one of the characters in the story, in which case you're following a very set path, which I don't think translates well, even to video games or to role playing.
Gotcha.
To add to Amar's point, I think translations that have come from video games to tabletop role playing have been quite successful. Like recently in the recent years, like the Dragon Age tabletop role playing game. That's one I can mention. The this year's Annie Awards, which is like the Oscars for tabletop role playing, was Aliens, the role playing game. So yeah, they do like they are successful in their translation form.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think people have in their mind stuff that they want to do, like, oh, that what if this happens in the movie? What if that happens in the movie?
Mm-hmm.
Once you start playing it in a tabletop role playing game, you have the chance to actually try and pull that off. That thing that you think that Ripley didn't do in the Alien film, you are going to try and do it in the
Mm-hmm.
role playing game. So I feel it opens up possibilities for people that are fans of that genre, or even tabletop role players who want to try the game.
Wow. You just like took me back more than 12 or 15 years. I remembered the arcade Alien. I don't know if you guys played it. And then I watched the movies, and I'm like, okay, there is nothing like there are a few elements in the movie, but it's totally different on the arcade. For me, the arcade was better. Like I was introduced to the arcade before the movie.
Were you
So
talking about the arcade from game from Capcom?
I'm not sure who was the publisher of it, but it was the Alien Arcade one. Basically, two people can play, and
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and then like you can pick up guns. It's like Metal Slug, but Alien, if you want to think about it that way.
Or was it the one, a fighting game type where you fight
No,
aliens?
no, no. It's not a fighting game. It's basically you progress through the levels like Metal Slug, and you can control the yellow slash and black robot that carries
Yeah.
essentially made to carry boxes, but now you can fight with it. I think that,
Nice.
that setting and that video game was stuck with me so much that when I look at the movies and I look at anything that's produced afterwards, I'm like, dude, like why don't you just go back to that? That's a better setting. Um,
Well, that felt all. So there, when you look at all the aliens movies, right? There's Alien, which is like a sci-fi horror slash thriller,
mhm.
where they're just hiding from a monster which is somewhere in the house,
Uh-huh.
right? It's that kind of story. Aliens then becomes kind of the action movie, right?
Mhm.
Thriller like action movie where nuke it from orbit. It's the only way to be sure,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, the third one is where it kind of goes off the rails a little bit, and then you have more action and even less horror, right? Because it's no longer a mix; it's now more just the kind of action element of it.
Kill the aliens.
And they even take away the kind of
The scary
the
vibe.
like pressing stress
Yeah.
because they get rid of the kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once they get rid of the kid, there's this. Yeah, she's already dead.
Yeah.
So you don't worry about her.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Ripley having a kid with her, she has to protect the entire time, is a secondary threat, which always is in the back of your mind. I think partially because you know that the hero is going to win in the end,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a movie to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
But at the back of your mind, you kind of sit there and go like, yeah, they could kill one of them off, right? So it's always like I hope my favorite makes it at least, and I
Yeah.
hope it's all of them,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there's that added layer of kind of
What
stress.
Would Game of Thrones be the exception to that? No one is safe.
Ha, ha, ha. I mean, like, keep in mind that, like, it depends on how you evolve the story. With Game of Thrones, sure, the Red Wedding episode was like, oh, dude, what the fuck just happened? Like, I was rooting for that guy the whole time. But towards the end, you kind of figured it out. Like, Jon Snow is Jon Snow. Like, that's not gonna change, and he's the main character, and that's what's gonna happen. So you kind of you can see how far they can go with it, but when it comes to killing characters or like deciding to, okay, I'm gonna shift the plot, all of you die in this one event, and then I'm gonna start focusing on the other characters which are not very active right now. So for Game of Thrones, my opinion on this is a lot of the main characters were sitting or were simmering like on the burner, getting ready, while the other secondary characters that were killed off in one event were just made the main focus because they were like, hey, let's give them justice. These are our characters too. Let's give them, hopes and dreams and fears and see what happens. Although you're gonna get rid of them eventually.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I love the when people talk about the game mechanics in role playing in general. By the way, part of the kind of great part of the introduction, that what introduces that level of suspense is the fact that you have dice, right?
True.
So at some point, it doesn't matter what the DM thinks of your character, whether they think it's integral to the plot. If they run the game straight, then a dice roll could kill your character, right?
Yeah.
And it goes the other way, probably more often, where I will have a character who is integral to the plot, and something bad will happen to him. You know, he will roll badly, the players will roll well, and this character that I had intended to be like a recurring villain will completely falter, potentially die. I had somebody who was supposed to be incredibly sinister, and I built a character in Vampire the Masquerade to be incredibly stealthy. He was Nosferatu. Yeah, Nosferatu, obfuscate powers, etc. And he just rolled terribly. He just rolled so badly every time he was introduced to the players, that he became a comedy character. And I just I could no longer play him seriously because the players had no respect for him whatsoever.
Wow.
And there was no reason for them to know that this was like on paper. I know what his stats are. He's phenomenal. And if any of my players are watching, it's Jerry.
Wow.
So on paper, he's supposed to be this incredibly stealthy, like, not quite ninja, but for simplicity's sake, like this ninja, shadow in the night, etc., who's always spying on the players. And, every time I tried to roll dice for him, they would just be horrific rolls that I've never seen in my life. I'd roll the dice and just go,
6s.
Yeah, just guys, make a perception check. Yep. And it's like, okay, I got really good. Okay, there's a guy, and the first time he was introduced, it's like, oh, there's a guy, you just out the corner of your eye, you spot a guy who just shifted around a corner at the wrong moment. I'm trying to maintain his prestige. And they find him, they hunt him down, etc. And he tries to get away. He can't. He rolls miserably, and he does it 3 more times. So the second time, it's we make our spot check. Who is it? There's a guy behind a car, and is it Jerry again? Yeah. And the third time it's just like, you spot a guy. Hi, Jerry. Oh.
I mean, that's a character on its own. Like, that characteristic on itself just built such a, like, the clumsy spy, like that's in itself is an achievement, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, from then on, he became a very different character because I couldn't play him he was never meant to be a threat to the party anyway. He was always meant to be a lackey that was spying on the players. But he was meant to be like the best spy, and he just couldn't do it. And he just eventually he just started showing up and asking the guys what they were doing because it became too embarrassing to keep going, which I think is a genuine way that he would respond to that, right? Like his confidence was shot, right? He started having like ego issues. He started building up a rapport with the players because they were always nice to him. They didn't realize he was like really good at this, so they just treated him like with pity.
I mean, it's school. It's cool. You kind of started your vision with the James Bond, but ended up with like an Austin Powers, like that.
Exactly.
That's what happened, basically.
Exactly.
Sorry, from what I'm hearing, Austin Powers was way better than this.
Wow. So
basically, I think what he ended up was, a Johnny English character instead of James Bond.
Well, it is what it is. So guys, when it comes to tabletop games, how did COVID-19 affect your communities? How difficult did the operation become? Like, how did you guys adapt when, like, let's start January, and you guys can basically, give me a timeline on how you basically went through it.
Yeah, well, we missed Middle East Film and Comic Convention for the first time ever. which was very sad because it's where we got our start. We've always been a big supporter, and it's where we get the biggest influx of players always comes at the conventions. We did run a slightly smaller convention at Back to Games in Dubai, just I think it was in February. So Corona was a known thing.
Yeah, but it was not like a big deal where it's like the lockdowns was not produced basically. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, we actually got the first case in Abu Dhabi the same day that we ran our convention in Abu Dhabi. Right, so that's when we made the decision of no more conventions until this is all sorted out, right? And at that time we were thinking maybe it would take a month, maybe it would take 2 months, right? So we were just gonna maybe miss one convention.
All right.
But obviously that that expanded into what's it been now, 7 months, 8 months. So we've started now doing e-conventions, right? Online conventions over Zoom and other things, using things like Roll20 to run games. I'm not sure if you've heard it, but basically a virtual tabletop where you can run games, and different DMs are using different things. But we've been also kind of lucky in that we've actually managed to get a lot of our international guests. So we've always had international game developers or whoever it is, people who publish their own role-playing games, who are either friends of ours or are known to the community, etc. And we've always wanted to bring them over to our conventions, but there's always a cost associated with that, which is airfare, hotels, and then if they have an appearance cost, etc. That as well. So we've only been able to do it a few times over the last 7 years. But now that we've moved to doing it all online, we're actually able to bring all of these people to the convention, because it doesn't matter where they are, right? And part of the kind of the reason that Nasser is on the committee is because we got to know him a lot better over the conventions, over the e-conventions, right? Because now, even though he's in Bahrain, the lines of communication have kind of opened up a little bit. So we've actually got, I would say, a wider reach now, all of a sudden, because we've opened up a lot from being, just in-person physical tabletop games to being much more online, and therefore. We also talked about, by the way, people leaving the country, which is why the GRC started to an extent. And also, Nasser was saying the same thing happens in Bahrain, because we have very transient populations. I would say out of the 1,000 people we have, at least 500 of them are not in Dubai or the UAE. Okay. Either because they never were, because we get people from Saudi, Bahrain, Kuwait, etc. But also because people leave. There's we have a large expat community, and people go back to where they're from after 1, 2, 3, 10 years. And when that happens, now we have a kind of maintained communication. So a lot of the people who were in the community very actively from 5, 6 years ago ended up coming to the e-conventions, because now we're available to them. So even if we go back to if Corona is resolved tomorrow, the e-conventions is definitely something we want to at least maintain, if not for every convention, at least for some of them, because it's just an entirely different, a much more open way of communicating, and it's linked us to other communities as well.
What about you, Nasser? What in terms of the tabletop house, like how were you guys affected, and what did you guys do?
We usually have a mini con in the museum, and that was stopped, so we couldn't do that. I think we were supposed to be in Comic-Con Bahrain. That was canceled as well. Just like Amar said, people are starting to use Zoom or other mediums, like most of the players here use Discord with Roll20. Uh, but it also gave me a chance to do something else. I started doing this thing with the Raven's Nest where once a week we talk about a subject that has to do with tabletop role playing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing that for a while now,
Mm-hmm.
and also except for these 2 last weeks where I had to take a break because I have stuff to do.
Yeah.
But I'll be back to it in 2 weeks time.
Yeah.
But it's also given me a chance to like let's say introduce people to other like GMs. Like we had Andy Staples there where he was talking about what gaming and giving GMing tips or DMing tips.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, passing on his experience to other people. And then I had Hamid and Najjar where he talked about storytelling. I'm still waiting on the time I can bring Ahmar and as a guest. So he's in the guest roster,
Uh-huh.
and I feel that people really benefit from these discussions that we have or tutorials.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Um, I just wanted to like I always try to keep like the last question or the last thing something really fun. So the tabletop community has a lot of specific merchandise slash swag that you guys have to obtain in order to be a part of sort of the community, like the sack that you keep the dice in, or like do you have like a
Right. Right.
tabletop? Like I just went today on Kickstarter and I saw this company that produces a tabletop role playing table, and
Yeah.
the table is like amazing. Leave how much it will cost for aside. It's like it can act as storage. It can act as like like things that will hold stuff off the table for you and stuff like that. It's a world on its own. But I'm just wondering, like, what do you guys geek on when it comes to swag like that?
I, I would say the number one role playing accessory is always going to be fancy dice, right? Um, I, I actually keep my dice in an Assassin's Creed box.
Ooh,
Something like that.
Actually,
nice.
but I have my emergency dice.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So I keep mine in
They
my
have different types and colors of them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so I have my handbooks for the recently deceased, which is where I keep my emergency dice if I ever need a
Mm-hmm.
if I ever need a sudden role playing game.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Um, right now though, it's all of my.
Cut.
Let's leave it at that. The other thing that people really like is all of the classic role playing books, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have things from earlier editions of D&D and things like that, the old box sets,
Mm-hmm.
those are really nice to come across because there's a certain level of nostalgia, and even though a lot of people don't envy the kind of the older rule systems for how they don't bring together all of the mechanics, I would say, and THACO and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
People still love to see them because it's like, this is from my childhood. I remember this. I have a huge box at my parents' house with stuff still in it. So the things I have in this house are only a portion of what is available.
I see.
But I would say those two things: the shiny math rocks, and 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 old role playing books are the
I
things people
think
geek out about most.
it's different for me. For me, it's role playing core books, core rule books. So
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit I have an addiction. 39 Kickstarters.
Okay. Yeah, you do have an addiction in that sense. Mine would be the early edition rule books. I definitely get that. I actually got my hands on an early edition of Cyberpunk, so
Nice.
I was.
It's still available for sale, by the way. You can still order it.
Mm-hmm. There was another thing that I've noticed. Tabletop producers do. They release a starter's kit. So the starter kits come with like a smaller version of the rule book, dice and like some other things that for the DM to basically use for the campaign. What are your thoughts on those? Do you think those are worth getting for new players, or do you think the players should get like the full version of the rule book and start from there?
I really like the starter kits.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if you're an experienced role player, I would almost always just get the full rule set.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason not to. But I mean, even I own some of the starter kits.
Mm-hmm.
You're making me reach behind me a lot. But for example, I have the
I didn't
Dungeons,
ask.
the Dungeons and Dragons Red Box, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people got their start in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Simplifying it can be really good, especially if you're trying to get, say, your kids into it.
Okay.
It's a great tool for that.
Gotcha.
So if you give your kids something like the starter kit, a starter set, it will run you through 90% of what you need to know, and it doesn't actually bog you down with all the other details, which is what I talked about at the beginning of the stream about when I got into role playing. Because like I said, I in various ways got 70 different rule books and just burned through them all, which you don't need to do. You just need a character sheet and like 2 or 3 pages of rules, and you can start playing. It's almost like when people get intimidated by the number of rule books that are available. I explain it almost like it's the dictionary. It's like you don't need to know all the words before you order a sandwich, right? Right? There is whatever it is, 500,000 words. You don't need to know them all to speak, right? And in the same way, you don't need all 70 rule books to play the game. You need 5 or 6 pages of one of the books, and you can get going.
Gotcha.
The starter set is also good for people to try a system and find out if they like it or don't like it. Maybe somebody plays a certain game and they find out that, hey, I don't think this game is for me, but they try another starter set and they find out, oh, this is the game for me. So this is the cool thing about the starter set, is that it's cheap and affordable. So instead of going and investing in all these core rule books and then finding out that you actually that this
Not
game
into
is
it.
not the game for you, you just get the starter set, try out the game, get a feel for the game, and then decide if you want to invest more. That's the cool thing about starter sets as well.
It has a similar effect to trying a game at a convention.
Yeah.
Right. If the best way, well, one of the best ways of, I think, getting into role playing, if you can play a game with somebody who is experienced at a convention or something like that, they will be able to help you through any of the complicated bits, and you'll get to see pretty much immediately what a system is like. We and different systems can be varying levels of complex. I say that most games need 5 or 6 pages. There's also a rule book for a friend of mine developed something called Chivalry and Sorcery, and that is a 500-page rule book.
Wow.
I think might be more.
Yeah.
Might be, but you definitely get your money's worth. But again, even then, you don't need the whole rule book to understand what's going on. It just has rules for everything should you need it, right? So if you want to play a peasant or a knight, it has a different whole set of characteristics, tributes. It has hundreds of skills, all of which have been well researched about. Even if you want to do basket weaving or singing songs or folklore or whatever it is, there are things there for it. Or if you want to do different types of stealth or fighting, so you don't need to know everything in order to move forward with it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I think when speaking of chivalry and sorcery, Yousef, you were there in the museum when we had a playtest of chivalry and sorcery. Remember, I think you met Andy Staples there.
Yeah, I met Andy there. It was quite interesting, to be honest. We discussed a few things, and one of the things that Andy was really into was looking into the Arabic folklore in terms of finding stories. I think that's what I really most remember. But those conventions, that meeting was really well organized, and I loved it, to be honest. I really wish it can be back.
Hopefully,
Hello?
once COVID-19 is over, we can
And
pull one.
inshallah.
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 Well, any final thoughts, Amar, before we close out? Like any final words? Like an advice for game developers, for example.
Advice for game developers. Well, I would say, like I said, game development is not necessarily my thing, but always keep in mind what your mechanics are doing to progress your story. I know that we sometimes get the two a little bit detached, but good mechanics will help you tell your story. Whether it's tone, whether it's pacing, whether it's whatever it is, good mechanics done the right way can really help progress the setting, the tone, the story that you want to tell. Yeah, in terms of game developers, that's I think all I want to say. For closing words, though, if anyone is looking for a game, feel free to stop by the Gulf Role Playing community page, and we'll help you find someone to play with. So if you want to give role playing a try,
for sure,
we are there for you.
I'm gonna share the Facebook page on the chat momentarily. So, Nasser, any final words?
We are having a econ on the 31st and 30th of October. So check out our Facebook group and you'll find news about that. So, and there's going to be, if you're interested in tabletop role playing, there will be games run. Sign up for these games. Some of these games might have some celebrity dungeon masters or game masters running different games. There's also going to be some panels. Check out the panels of discussion and those that you might find something interesting for you. That's it, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we're gonna move on to the news and highlights segment. All right. So,
pleasure. Will you be joining us for the news segment?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
I think we're Ali's prisoners. We're Ali's prisoners today.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm sorry. It is the show.
I'm just joking.
It's like maybe you can think about it.
Ali rules this thing.
Yeah, think about it as part of the campaign. It's like you come in until like the master of the dungeon decides you go out, and you need to figure out a way, an excuse now to actually escape this. So,
is it possible that I can grab a coffee and come back?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
I will be right back if you guys can give me a chance.
Yeah, no worries. So the first line of news we have is the PlayStation 5 showcase. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I just want to make sure that the people that are here, Yousef, Bahazza, and Omar, have you guys seen it? What are your thoughts about it? Yousef?
I haven't seen it.
You haven't. Okay, so you're not like a big. I understand that you're not a big video game fan, but basically it's the showcase of the price of the PS5. So as you know, there are two versions of PS5 coming out: the digital version and the hard, like CD version. They have $100 difference between them. And they showcased a number of video games that are gonna come exclusively to PS5 on launch, and there were a lot of amazing titles that were shown. The first one is basically Final Fantasy. Is it 15 or 16? 16, I think.
16.
Yeah, 16.
16.
So Final Fantasy 16 is definitely an interesting title because there was no talk about it. It just came out of the blue. And like I've liked the setting of it. It's gonna be set in sort of a medieval setting, which is very very interesting. What do you think about it, Yousef? Do you think using
Well,
the Final Fantasy assets in a medieval setting is something we would want to do? Because like it's always been
see,
fantasy, right?
see, Final Fantasy games, as you said, it's always been about fantasy, and I believe that uh, uh, fantasy is also about mystery. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when you look at the old Final Fantasy games, I mean, let's go back to Final Fantasy 1 up to 6. There has always been this setting where there are royals, there are people that are living in a time where knights exist,
Mm-hmm.
and only up to Final Fantasy 7 and 8 have you seen that it went to a more futuristic setting.
Mm-hmm.
And with the latest installment of Final Fantasy 15, you saw basically a society that depended on waters, that had cities, that had that bit of advanced technology. So going back to its roots, it is quite good. The tone that I've seen in that trailer is that they're going with something a little bit more darker, which is similar to Dragon's Dogma.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've played Dragon's Dogma, but
Of course.
it certainly
Amazing.
gave that vibe and feel.
By the way, Dragon's
Yep.
Dogma has a
And
show right now. Did you check it out?
yeah, on Netflix.
Yeah.
I love
Finished
that.
it in one setting, and I was disappointed at the end, but it is what it is.
Come on.
Um,
Why?
well, it kind of added something else to the lore of it. It's basically like what happens in Dragon's Dogma is the Arisen kills the dragon and then he becomes God, right? What's happened now
Yep.
is the Arisen killed the dragon and because of his of the Arisen's
Action.
intention of revenge, like he wanted to kill the dragon for revenge, not because he wanted to
Mhm.
save the people from the dragon. He became a dragon himself. So I'm like, dude, this was not brought up in the game. Like, this was like, I sort of wanted a happy ending for the guy because he lost everything that he had, but it ended up in a sad tone, and I was like, dude, why? And it's 7 episodes. Like, why do you have to make something so sad in 7 episodes? But that's my opinion on it.
Uh,
Um,
I think sometimes happy stories are unfinished stories. I don't know, Amar, what do you think by having a sad story for an ending?
Well, the happily ever
or-
after ending is kind of an overused trope, but it's what people kind of want to hear.
mhm.
You can often tell a story is fake. This is getting slightly off topic, but you can often tell a story is fake if the story ends. If the story ends, because stories don't actually end, right? The happily ever after is for any kind of Disney movie is you're running a kingdom, right?
Mhm.
Like things are gonna happen. Like look at our history for almost any kingdom, right? There are wars, revolutions, plagues, battles, right? Year after year after year. What's this happily ever after? What do you like 2 years, 3 years before there's another like major conflict or political uprising? Like what's going on here, right?
Yep.
So happily ever after is not a real thing, which is why it can feel fake. You have to leave it with kind of a more in-depth happily ever after, right?
Mhm.
Good timeline for it.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that element. The other thing I wanted to talk about was you were talking about kind of developing fantasy. I think we get locked into other tropes as well when it comes to fantasy. People often say to me, especially when I'm running a game, of are you doing standard fantasy? And those two words upset me when they're together.
Fantasy is
Because
not standard.
when
It's simple.
well,
Yeah.
exactly. When you say fantasy, it should be whatever it is that your imagination can conjure up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
uh, it shouldn't
That,
always be
difference.
it shouldn't always be Tolkien, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love Lord of the Rings and I love The
Yes.
Hobbit, but it shouldn't always be exactly Tolkien, all right? Even when Tolkien did
Exactly.
that, he didn't limit himself to what was available at the time. He came up with so much of it.
Yeah.
The reason we think of these creatures as being like that is because he
Mhm.
changed a lot of what they used to be. There are elves that are like Santa's elves, and those are not the elves of Lord of the Rings, right?
Yep.
There are decisions being made
Mm-hmm.
and choices being made,
Mhm.
and you can do anything with it, which is why I'm quite happy to hear that Final Fantasy is going back to its roots to an extent, but I hope that doesn't mean they're starting from scratch, if you know what I mean. I hope there's still new things that they're kind of bringing into
I
it.
know.
Mm-hmm. I hope so too. But there are also other titles like the
I love
use.
point that you made with
Yeah.
fantasy can be anything you want. Yeah. So a good just point to that is it's basically the difference between Star Trek and Star Wars. Star Wars is a sci-fi fantasy game, while Star Trek is basically a sci-fi game. Sorry, a sci-fi episode, TV thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, uh, Final Fantasy going back to its roots, and I believe it's gonna be a little bit of
Are you still there, Yousef?
it's gonna be a little bit interesting down the line.
Okay. So there were a number of other games that were announced, like the Hogwarts Legacy.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Um, the Spider-Man game, a number of big titles that some were shared before, and like the Hogwarts Legacy is just shared now. So it's interesting to see all these games being just exclusive on PS5. Um, but yeah, it's basically like now what we're looking forward to is like, can we actually get our hands on a PS5? Is it even possible right now? That's a very interesting thought, I would say, because of the turmoil that's going with the pre-orders and everything. I don't know when it would actually be available in the Gulf and how much would it be for. Like, sure, they'll announce a price online, but what's the real price on the ground? You know, like, or the black market price, if they want to call it like that.
Yeah. I've been very forgiving during COVID for a lot of my games. I usually pre-order them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a title I'm interested in, I usually will know that I'm interested in it long before it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to pre-order them when I can, and that also means that I've essentially ordered games like Cyberpunk 2077.
Oh, I pre-ordered that game. I mean, like, that's
Yep.
hands down.
And Bloodlines 2, and both of them have announced that there's going to be delays. And as far as I'm concerned, that's kind of fine, because my schedule tends to mean I'll play them when I get them. Right?
Mhm.
It's not. I'm happy for them to kind of take the time they need to make sure that we get, a really good game out of it, rather than try and crunch to meet an arbitrary deadline.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Bloodlines too, because I don't know if you've been following the news on this game in particular, but early July they fired the creative director, or the lead narrative director, Mitsoda. And I'm like, dude, the guy made the first Bloodlines, and you basically, from what Mitsoda said, like, there was no issues. It was just sudden that they basically let him off. Like, I'm not sure who to believe here, like the studio or Mitsoda, but it's like, it's a really interesting environment. Like, I pre-ordered the game as well, but now I'm like, okay, if Mitsoda's not involved anymore, like, I don't feel like actually having to play the game, because like the vision behind the masquerade or the bloodlines itself is not the same anymore. But from what he,
Yeah,
yeah,
it is a worry, and there have been talks of various vampire games. When I say vampire, I'm talking Vampire the Masquerade,
mm-hmm.
right?
I have
Games
two
for a long
video
time.
games. There are
Yeah,
the two ones that are, I think, available right now.
yeah. I
I
mean,
haven't played them.
but there've been attempts at making an MMO for it as well, which we were really interested in.
Yep.
And there've been various attempts going forward that just ended up being vaporware,
Yep.
right? And that's always a worry, and it's something where you really have to get it right, and it's so hard to get it right when it comes to a sequel,
Mm-hmm.
especially a sequel to something like the original one, which had so much in terms of I replayed that game 4 times and got a completely different experience each time.
Yeah.
And not just from I don't just mean like the ending. I'm not talking like Mass Effect 3.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like
Going through.
the first time I ran through it, it was almost political intrigue. The second time, it was basically a stealth game, like Thief. The third time, it was just a bashing game where you just run through punching people to death. And the fourth time through, I ran it with a Malkavian, and I don't even know what to describe that as.
Oh, I played a Malkavian. Dude, that's a crazy run. Honestly,
That's
like
ridiculous.
I'm really excited to run that on Bloodlines too, because I just want to see how crazy can they go with that. But
Yeah.
Malkavian is definitely a different set of rules, basically.
I always tell people if they're gonna play Malkavian, do it on your second run through because, first of all, you need to know what's going on. But second of all, there's a lot of spoilers.
Yeah.
If you play a Malkavian, because they kind of see into the future, right?
That's correct.
And even after playing it through 3 times and then playing the Malkavian, I maxed out how perceptive my Malkavian was. And even just like the starting area, because when you bump up your perception, things glow if they're important. And I remember just being in the starting area and being like, "Oh, there's free money under the sink. Oh my God, where's this key?" Like on my third playthrough, still had no idea any of those things were around.
Yeah, that it's an interesting game, but I'm really wary of the future of
Yeah.
the franchise. They did release another. They did another studio actually is planning to release another game for the Masquerade. It's called Swan Song. I don't know if you've had a look on that one. So
I've heard, but I haven't had a chance to look in depth at it.
The Werewolf, the Apocalypse game as well. Same universe, the same world, but different developer.
yeah,
There was a trailer for it. This looked kind of good, but I don't know which timeline it's being played. I thought it looked very futuristic to me.
yeah, but that's the thing, though. If like for example, with Dungeon and Dragons, they didn't trust anybody with the franchise until basically they saw somebody doing good, and which is Lyrian Studios, right? And then they gave them the IP to make Baldur's Gate 3. With the Masquerade, I don't know like what they're doing. They're basically just giving the IP for whoever can basically afford to buy it, and it could be good, it could be bad. Like that affects the IP in the long run. So I don't know if they are looking after the IP in that sense, or they're like, you know what, like somebody approached us and they're gonna pay money, so give them what they want.
Well, even for the original Bloodlines, Troika went out of business immediately afterwards. In fact, not even afterwards, during. They published the game and then immediately went out of business. And even the patches were done by the developers kind of in their free time after after the company had already closed their doors. And it ended up being this kind of like, cult classic / semi-big hit, but it still didn't save Troika.
Still stands the test of time.
Yeah, in terms of dialogue, I give you that. Like, there's nothing that would like I'm thinking that is there like I think Oblivion and the Masquerade are the best conversation or like kind of like choice versus or risk versus reward kind of games that I've played in terms of like conversations with the NPCs and stuff like that. Um, and I really want to see more of that. Like it's sad to see like that kind of depth is getting lost because you know money is involved. That kind
One
of thing.
thing I want to add,
Mm-hmm.
if somebody buys like any of the IPs, I hope, and this is something I'm just hoping,
Mm-hmm.
that they have somebody that plays role-playing game in the development team, or one or two people, because um, if you go back to let's go back to the successful games, like
Mm-hmm.
recent RPGs that were successful. Most of them had people, or most of the developers were actually playing role-playing games. They're role players, like the guys that worked on The Witcher.
Mm-hmm.
They had, I guarantee you that they have, like they have at least one or two people role playing. Uh, look at who what game they signed up. Cyberpunk, another table, something that came out of tabletop role playing.
Mm-hmm.
Larian Studio, the guys who did
Divinity.
Divinity.
Yep.
Yeah, these guys are admit that thing.
Mm-hmm.
They admit that they are tabletop role players, and they actually have campaigns and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So all I'm hoping is, yeah, maybe you got rid of that guy for Vampire Bloodlines. I hope you have somebody on your team, or like quite a number of people, because that really helps. I don't know why, because they go hand in hand. Tabletop role playing and storytelling and game design, I see them going hand in hand. That's where you get like the best products from what I've seen basically recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's see how it goes. I'm really stoked for Cyberpunk coming out in November, and like if you read the lore book and like understand who Johnny Silverhand is, and you look at who he is in the game, and you're like, okay, that's a pretty interesting take. And you know and if you look at the timeline of Cyberpunk and what happened and where you are right now when you start the game, it's a very interesting take, and I actually can't wait to get my hands on it. So moving on to the next piece of news, EA to replace Origin with EA Desktop as a Service rebrand continues. I'm sorry, the shift is kind of like all over the place from that to this, but people who play Origin, people who play what's that game called? Um, Apex Legends. Yes, you guys have to basically delete Origins and install a new thing so you can play your game. I'm not a big fan of BRs, therefore I'm like, yeah, you do your thing. Um, moving on, we have former CD Projekt and Techland devs form a new studio, Star Wars Industries. So they already have IPs in development for PC, PS5, and they're due in 2021. Um, Interesting. Um, like what? The thing is, when you hear about the studio, you just hear about it forming. These guys already have IPs that are gonna be published next year. So I don't know why they basically hid that information all this time for them to actually put a showcase.
This was the news item you sent, which got me excited.
Oh.
uh, just because and because it was news to me as well, right? So a lot of the stuff that in the list, a couple of it is things we knew were coming, or things like that. But this was something that came kind of out of the blue.
Yep.
And yeah, it's CD Projekt Red, right? So it's The Witcher, it's all that good stuff. Doing some of my favorite video games, because I did really love The Witcher.
Yeah.
So having a look at what they might be doing next is interesting. It's also always scary when there's a change, right? So like when Blizzard started giving a little bit more leeway to their parent company, right?
Mm-hmm.
You started to see some of the problems that came out with kind of the Diablo mobile game and things like that.
Yeah.
So there's always that worry that the right people are no longer going to be in control.
Mm-hmm.
But if they can maintain it, and so far the project that they've chosen
Mm-hmm.
seems like a project that seems like the kind of project that they do well. So that makes me very hopeful, and it's the kind of project that nobody else would take on.
Mm-hmm.
Sci-fi thriller.
Yeah, sci-fi thriller, but also from an unknown, lesser known Polish writer,
Mm-hmm.
is exactly the kind of what's it called, tack they took with Witcher to begin with, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a surprise. Like it could be a hit or it could be a miss. That's
Yep.
that like we don't know so far, but the team looks promising.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm hopeful in general, but you know, I'm stealing myself to be proven wrong, but I'm remaining optimistic for the moment.
I'm also like with you on that, but you know, like history of gaming has shown us differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I'm.
I 100% agree with you on that. I mean, in this business, you're like, oh, a big IP. I'm so excited, and then when it lands, you're like, what was I excited for? I mean,
Yeah.
it's not what I hoped for at all. Um,
Well,
yep.
I've often felt that like when a game is announced, I build it up in my head actually quite a bit
Mm-hmm.
because I think you must get this as a game developer where you'll hear about what they're planning to do with a game and you'll start imagining how you would do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you start to sit there and basically go like, oh, I bet they have a mechanic where you can do this or where you can do that. Oh, I bet they have a mechanic which works this way. I bet they're gonna have like this in-depth way that you can handle this. I wonder how they're doing this. I would do it this way, but it's gonna be interesting to see how they do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the game actually comes out, a lot of that just gets kind of swept under the rug, and it's like, yeah, it's a puzzle platformer.
Yeah.
You're like, oh,
Okay.
you told me this was like Portal, and you had like
Yeah.
you know you had it with like time travel, and there was going to be like interdimensional and it was going to be, and you told me it was going to be in like 4D, but
Mhm.
you jump on the platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean with that.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is sometimes shocking, but like once you go through this kind of disappointment a number of times, you're like, you become jaded, and you're like, you know what? It's my fault for expecting too much of this.
It's the same way.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not. Go ahead.
No, one game that I think is underrated is a game called We Happy Few. It
It's a
was
very
done
nice
by
game. As for a story perspective, it's a very nice game.
Yeah, that's what I said. The game mechanics for it are the way that the game plays is pretty basic.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's kind of a little bit of a stealth game, but mostly kind of an FPS almost.
Mm-hmm.
Not even. But the story wise was really good, and I just wish that they did a little bit more with their core mechanic, which was you essentially have to take pills to make yourself happy.
Yep.
In this kind of dystopian world,
Mm-hmm.
and people can tell if you're off your medication, right? So it's kind of the world of Equilibrium, but set in kind of 1950s Britain, no 1960s 70s Britain.
Mm-hmm. I see.
But what I really expected when the game was being described was when you're on the medication, the more of it you're on, the less you get to see, but the higher your stealth is, right? So it shades the real world from you,
Mm-hmm.
so that you don't see what's really going on. Like if there's somebody being murdered in the street, it'll fade that from your view and will show it to you as somebody, a medic who's helping somebody,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's to make you believe that this world is happy and good and bright and colorful.
Yeah.
And what I was expecting was for you to always have to kind of maintain a balance of being able to see what's really going on and being stealthy.
Mm-hmm.
and it was always going to be a choice of, well, I need to be less stealthy, or more in danger, because
Mm-hmm.
I need to see where the secret passages are, what's really going on, the secret propaganda, all of that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But in some cases, I need to like dose up on the happy pills because I really need to get around this facility or whatever it is. That's
Yeah.
what I thought the main mechanic was going to be, and I thought that was a great idea. And then when the game actually came out, it was there's a bar, and if
If it's
if it's
below,
high, it's
you
good,
take more.
and if it's low, it's bad. It's like,
It's
well,
it's like restaurants when they advertise a new burger joint, and
yeah,
you have all these expectations, and then when you go and actually order the burger and try it, you're like, that's not as good as they made it up to be.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Since you mentioned the burger joint example, um, I was really disappointed by a cheese-filled patty because like when you think about it as an idea, you're like, dude, they actually invented the wheel here. When you actually try it, there's like, dude, no, nah, that was just too much work, and I'm like dirty around. So it is
I
what
will
it
leave.
is.
I will let Amal answer that one because I believe you cook, Amal.
Yeah, I mean, you can. Okay, so you can do cheese-filled patties,
Uh-huh.
and you can make them okay, but they end up more like a. Have you ever had like arancini?
I don't know what that is.
It's like a rice ball, but there's like stuff in the middle,
Okay,
and it's deep fried, right?
all right.
So you can do stuff like that, and it can actually turn out okay, but you don't need to, right?
Yeah,
there's,
exactly.
there's no benefit. You just end up with like what's it called? Like juicy cheese, which is not the cheese you want.
Yeah, pretty much. Interesting example, Nasser. Um, but moving on, so Take Two Interactive CEO justifies $70 price hike. Um, since you guys are not aware of what's going on in the game industry, uh, the publishers are basically aiming to hike up the prices to $10 more. So currently you get them $59.99. Now they're gonna be $69.99 moving forward. And Take Two is the publisher of the NBA games, right? And they're justifying the raising the price to that because they want to deliver a more of a quality product. This is a company that has introduced gambling in a basketball game. I don't know how you can justify that. Basically, they have like a written statement about it, and I quote: "I know it sounds unlikely, but our goal primarily is not to maximize our revenues. Thank, thank, Thankfully, things are really good with our revenue, but our goal is to provide the best entertainment experience on earth. The mission of the company is to be the most creative, the most innovative, and the most efficient entertainment company, not interactive entertainment company on earth." And I'm like, I read this, and as a consumer, this is like corporate BS right there. Like, in your face corporate BS. It's, I don't know how to justify this. I mean, like, you haven't mentioned anything about the price. You haven't mentioned anything about, like, your bottom line or anything. Like, mention these things, and I might think maybe, okay, fine. But if your games have microtransactions, if your games have gambling in them, like, why would you raise the price of the base game, and you're already making other profits through the game itself? So you want me to pay $70, and then you want me to pay more for cosmetics, and then you want me to pay more for additional stuff in the game. I don't think that's fair, honestly, but PS5 is going the same way. Like, the game, they announced that the games on PS5 are going to be on that ballpark as well. CD Projekt Red has basically was the saint in this whole ordeal, and they said whoever owns The Witcher on PS4 will own it on PS5 for free. If you already bought pre-ordered the game on PS4 for Cyberpunk, you can actually have it on PS5 for free. And those are good practices. The
Yeah.
problem is the world is not perfect, and you'll have people like EA and Take Two make these kind of dumb decisions and establish a market around it.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of the reason that I've been very supportive of platforms like GOG, goodoldgames.com,
Mm-hmm.
GOG.com, which
Yeah.
is Good Old Games.
Yeah.
Just because they treat their customers, I think, with the level of sincerity and respect that they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been kind of doing the right thing. They've always published all of their games without without DRM and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a lot of my kind of favorite old games.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So a lot of the classic games which have been so hard to find have been available with them.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they publish them without the DRM, which means you can move it from platform to platform, which means I can install the exact same game on multiple PCs, and it just makes all of my life easier as a customer.
Yep.
It to an extent, it's giving me all of the benefits of piracy without having to pirate it. If you see what I mean, because a lot of people don't seem to realize that there is a benefit to game piracy, which is the ease of use.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you start to layer on levels of security which are kind of hindering your experience,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to do all that and pay for it is great,
Yeah.
right? Because you get the best service.
Yeah.
CD Projekt Red is associated with GOG, which is why I bring that up,
Mm-hmm.
because they have always had this great kind of philosophy going forward with how they treat their customers, and that's a great example of it.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of corporate BS, by the way, I agree 1,000%. Yeah, saying we're not here to make money and all that stuff, and that's why we're raising the price is ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's no, I don't know why. I don't know why those words bothered to kind of fall out of a face like that. Is my response.
The problem is, like, I don't envy the person who wrote the press release. It's like, imagine that guy's job to basically like he's typing this and is like, oh my god, what am I saying? It's like, I'm gonna like literally say something that I'm really against as a consumer. But yeah, that's the deal with them. Dungeons and Dragons Adventure Begins. So we talked earlier about a starter kit, and actually Dungeons and Dragons is releasing one on this October. So
So Dungeons and Dragons already has the starter kit for 5th edition. The thing you're looking at is a D&D board game based on
Gateway board game.
Ooh,
yeah.
Okay.
Which is I had a look at it. It seems pretty good. I think it's a great way of getting into the lore of D&D.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. Well, I mean, it didn't show the mechanics exactly, but I suspect it's going to give a kind of watered down version.
Yeah.
And it's also going to allow you to. One thing I really like about it, though, is that it essentially rotates the responsibility of a DM.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So effectively, it's a DM-less set,
Mm-hmm.
which means you don't have to have someone who is in control the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And there are actual, full-blown role-playing systems that run in that way. Things like Fiasco. Fiasco is a great role-playing system that doesn't use a specific DM. And those can also be really good for getting players into it because you're all playing it together rather than having someone who is running the game for players. So I think that board game might have another layer of kind of accessibility to it.
I see. Yeah, I just misunderstood the news line. My apologies. But I mean, like, people who are interested in Dungeons and Dragons as a lore, this is sort of an interesting entry level thing, and it begins with $25. So, why not? I mean,
the new price points have been very good for 5th edition, as far as I'm aware.
What are the historic price points in that sense? Like,
well, it's hard to measure against them because if you really talk historic, you're talking about like the 80s, right?
Okay.
So, so I can maybe check on some older boxes, but it's going to mean something else to say $10, right?
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
$10.
Inflation
That's a
wise.
car,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, they've been very reasonable in comparison to like their competitors,
Mm-hmm.
uh, especially recently.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not getting cheaper, I would say, to get into gaming.
Yeah. Cool. The next line of news: Black Myth Wukong to spawn a trilogy and feature over 100 enemy types. Okay, Wukong is this game developed by this Chinese independent development studio, and like they just showed a trailer, right? And everybody went bonkers. They were like, "This game is so good. It looks really nice and everything." But I think it's really over the board when they say, "Oh, we kind of signed up for a trilogy now, and we're gonna have like this many types of enemies." And I'm like, "You're kind of jumping the gun over here." I think it's just too soon to announce something like that. And it's funny because the website that I checked out says that the release date will be the end of next year. So they have already put a deadline for the first game to come out, and they already said that they're gonna make it a trilogy and have more games come out. Um, what do you think about such practices, Yousef?
Well, to be honest, um, it's good to be ambitious,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really excited for the game. To be honest, it's something coming out from the Chinese market, which doesn't necessarily always produce the best of games,
Mm-hmm.
or basically get that release for the Western audience and English-speaking audience. A good example would be, if you look into Japan, you have a lot of games that are still, created in the Japanese native language,
Mm-hmm.
and fans take around 3 to 5 years to basically beg their original companies to release them in the Western market in English, so that at least they can enjoy it. Um, Captain Tsubasa comes into mind. The games that basically, I forgot the name of the game. It's a famous RPG that just released recently.
Chrono Trigger?
Uh,
No.
no, Chrono Trigger was one. Something that has to do with dragons. Dragon Quest.
Yep.
Dragon
Okay.
Quest,
Same
yeah.
thing.
Basically, Dragon Quest, the earlier releases took a lot of years just to come to the Western audience. Even Mother, which was an old NES classic,
Mm-hmm.
was basically the second version when it was, in the Japanese market.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's really interesting also is games are an interesting way to spread culture, and I'm really interested to get. I've seen the movies talking about the Monkey King more
Mm-hmm.
than once. Okay, you have seen those happen in. I've seen those happen in. I've seen those translations. I've seen translations of Arabian-based stories like um, Sinbad and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very difficult to see. Uh, it would be an interesting twist to see.
Yeah, for sure.
Just a sec.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I think it's an overly ambitious jump to not release a game, but jump directly and say, "Hey, I'm gonna release a trilogy," without seeing how successful will the first game be. But it is what it is.
Don't you
Um,
think
moving.
it's because they probably have people that wanting to buy it maybe in China before they actually release it?
So what happened with this particular game is they just released a demo. يعني
Mm.
on يعني basically somebody's playing a demo on YouTube and people looked at it and like they just loved the quality, loved the playstyle and everything. But just from a demo, you can't jump into the next step and say, "Hey, we're gonna release a trilogy." I just think it's a bit too
Yeah.
fast, but
Yeah,
you might be
I agree
right.
with you.
Maybe the because the story of the Monkey King is definitely a big story in China. That's why maybe they secured investors and now they can actually develop that story. So that's
I think also the hype that was behind it generated enough interest to support this game really well, especially after the worldwide reception.
mhm. All right. Awesome. So moving on, Facebook reveals Oculus Quest 2. I had a look and like the price range with the specs that they're giving us, I think it's a really nice piece of hardware compared to the uh, the the Steam Vive that I have. Definitely cheaper, definitely more mobile. But here's the catch though. Um, Oculus is now connected to Facebook. Like they want to remove the Oculus name for some reason, and they placed Facebook Reality Labs as sort of the umbrella for their VR division. And also, if you violate Facebook rules, for example, if you didn't use your account in the way that it should be used, your VR purchase is kind of null. Like if your Facebook account gets banned, you can't use the VR headset or the products that you bought for the VR headset, which I think is a bit of an overkill. I mean, who would want to do that?
Well, there's a really interesting law that's on the ballot in Boston right now. Something called the right to repair. Have you heard of this?
No, I haven't actually. That's interesting. What's it about?
Okay, so essentially, you have the right to repair your device, which means if someone locks you out of your device in a way that is, if you're restricted from repairing your device by the parent company, they have to give you the specs to repair it yourself.
Gotcha. That's
Right.
okay. Apple is not gonna be happy with that at all. Okay.
Yeah. I know a lot of people are not going to be happy with that at all. I was really surprised when I saw it's on the ballot. It's not a law that's passed or anything like that, but it's something that people are pushing for recently. And it's a very. I'm not sure if it would technically apply to the Facebook example you're giving, but it's not a small jump to. Sorry, it's not a large jump to say that it would.
Yeah, it would reach that extent for sure. But yeah, the argument over here is basically having access to your own device that you just bought because the parent company doesn't allow, for whatever reason, doesn't allow you to have an account on it, or you don't want to have an account on Facebook. Like now you're forced to have an account on Facebook to actually use the Oculus, which is a bit, I think it's a bit too much, honestly. Like, you had an Oculus account, now you're canceling it because you just want to have everything on Facebook. And imagine you're wearing a VR headset and you have ads on VR. I mean, do you want that? I don't know.
Well, this has been a discussion in gaming in general for a while, right? Because take something like World of Warcraft, from ages ago. That's when I remember the discussions of, if you get banned from using your World of Warcraft account, you've paid, whatever it was at the time, $40 to have the game, and then you pay a subscription on top of that. Now they're canceling your subscription, which means you don't have to pay the subscription fees. But you also have lost access to something that has a monetary value, right? And there's other things that have monetary value about it. Like, people have offered me, I think, $2,000 for my World of Warcraft character, just because of the achievements that I have from kind of classic and things like that.
Nice.
And if you're telling me I now lose access to that, you've basically cut me off from potentially $2,000. Is that okay? Right?
Not okay.
I mean, selling your character is not okay for Blizzard at all.
Yeah, exactly. They don't allow it, right?
Yeah.
But if you can make the claim that it has a monetary value, right, and they've now stripped that from you, that's not a trivial case.
That's a lawsuit down the line.
Yeah.
Nasser is
And
plotting
by the
right
way-
now. He's like, who do I know who has a Worldcraft account right now? Maybe. Yeah, I stopped playing
Incidentally,
WoW just for the record, but yeah. You were saying?
You stopped
Tom?
or you still?
I stopped playing WoW. It's like I didn't play it during the classic days, so maybe that was all the craze and people jump to retail right now. But I actually was like, okay, now I can afford. Like there was a day when I was like, you know what? I never played WoW, and everybody talks about WoW. I bought the game. I've got a subscription. I played for 2 weeks straight, and then I was like, okay. I had like a a Worgen, what do you call it, warlock, and
Okay.
in 2 weeks from level 1 to 96, and then I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna play this game anymore. It's just there are so many
I
things that there are so many things that are disconnected for a new player to basically
yeah.
understand about WoW, and if you're not part of like the beginning of the game or like the classic, and then you go through like Cataclysm, and then you go through each expansion, you won't understand it. And now with the recent expansion, Shadowlands, they're kind of cutting
Yeah.
off everything and throwing it like in a hidden place, and then you have like, oh, everybody's going to be on Shadowlands now, and everything else is just an extra. So I don't know how that goes.
I stopped playing properly. I think probably Mists of Pandaria.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I stopped playing in general. I always buy the expansion and I play it for like a week.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've I resubscribe just to try out the expansion,
Mm-hmm.
and at some point, I think it was just last expansion where I couldn't get back into it even to just try it out,
Mm-hmm.
because I auto leveled my main character up to whatever it was at the time.
100, I think.
Uh,
Yeah,
is
110.
it 100?
110 something,
Oh,
I think. Yeah.
maybe it was the expansion before that then.
Mm-hmm.
But I leveled it up to I think 100,
Mm-hmm.
and oh, you could go to 110, but it only leveled you to 100.
Oh,
Um,
correct. Yeah.
yeah, so I did that, and it reset all of my talents, and I just spent so long going like, which one is which now?
Yeah,
What's the?
you
Oh no,
forgot. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
and all my macros didn't work anymore, and I
oh.
didn't get into it. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, I play MMOs, or like a certain MMO right now. All, like, it's a whole commitment, right? Being part of a guild, and like, you do your raids and trials and whatever. Um, and I'm still thinking, like, I think there's somebody out there developing the next good MMO that I'm gonna be, dedicated to. What I'm playing right now is the Elder Scrolls Online, which a lot of people will be like, why are you wasting your time? But I'm in it for the lore because I like the Elder Scrolls saga.
yeah.
But the gameplay, I agree with you. I mean, like the gameplay is not it's not like WoW. WoW gameplay is really better in that circumstance. But I like the sense of community, and I like the lore part of that game, so I'm still stuck with it. But I'm still looking forward to an MMO that can capture me and like get me set in that world. And there's one that's announced, and we're not sure if it's gonna be really good, and it's set for next year. I don't know if you heard about Ashes of Creation.
Yeah, yeah, I have heard of it.
So the cool thing about Ashes of Creation is created by somebody who is an MMO player himself. He played the Lineage for the longest time, and he was successful in business. So he decided, you know what, like he basically retired when he was 29 because he was really successful, and he opened his own like tabletop shop. Like he basically had a cafe, and like people can just come in and play tabletop games, and it was based in Silicon Valley, right? So people will come in from Sony, from Blizzard, like people who worked in Silicon Valley, and come and play tabletop games. So he talked to them, and he was like, after some time, he was like, why not create our own game? Like you know how to do this, you know how to do this. Let's create something, and that's how the idea of Ashes of Creation came to be. They kickstarted it, met the goal, and now it's a reality. It's almost gonna be there. Um, the cool thing about it is there's no box price for it. Anybody who wants to play it can basically just pay a subscription, which is I think $14 or $15 a month, and you can play it. So
I'm surprised more people haven't been doing that model anyway. Just because, I mean, World of Warcraft, what is it, $12 a month? something like that.
Yeah.
And I've had a subscription for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
The actual box price is nothing
Yeah.
compared to how much I've paid just for the subscription.
Mm-hmm.
So why are you inserting this barrier to entry?
Yeah. I mean, uh, the thing is, like, there is a lot of MMOs out there, and there are a lot of payment systems. Like, for example, the Elder Scrolls Online kind of have a hybrid of that system. So
Yeah.
the box price for Elder Scrolls Online is $9, I think, and you can play the game until you basically the base game. You can play the whole thing for $9, right? Then you come to the expansion. So the expansions are basically priced in a certain way. However, if you want to keep a subscription, which is called the ESO Plus, you don't have to pay for any of the expansions. All the expansions open up to you. So
And
so you basically like it depends on what kind of a player you are. If you want to stay committed to this game and like keep playing, you can just buy a monthly subscription, and you can play throughout any expansion and go to any region without being stuck. If you prefer certain DLCs, you can buy those and just play those. So they kind of made a hybrid system of it. I'm too into the game, so I've already like before they even introduced ESO online, or sorry, they had ESO online in place, so and the box base price, and then they shifted to the hybrid version. I started when they shifted to the hybrid version, and I just bought the expansions as I went, because for me, I never was serious about it. I was like, I'm gonna play, and I'm gonna quit at some point. So why buy the whole thing? So I kind of bought all. At this point, I bought all the expansions for the game except one, and I'm like, dude, like I spent so much time in this game. It would have been better to just have a subscription, and rather than spending it on each expansion. But yeah, I don't know why WoW would still have you pay a base price and then keep a subscription going. If you're a loyal customer for 4 years, for example, it's just
More money.
I mean, more money, sure, but it's like you want
Yeah.
that person to stick around, right? Like that's the whole point. Moving on. Splinter Cell and Assassin's Creed VR games announced for Oculus. I don't know about you guys, but Splinter Cell, I've been looking for a new game for Splinter Cell for some time right now, and for them to have a separate one just for VR, I'm kind of disappointed, honestly. Like, I really like Splinter Cell for the way it is, but having them for two Ubisoft VR stealth titles for Oculus specifically, that kind of brings up a big giant in the market, and that's basically Facebook. Sad to say, but unfortunately, I'm gonna get an Oculus just to play VR right now. I mean,
Spending their
Like-
money.
I liked your principal stance earlier.
Even if you're saying that,
I know, but it's like, like sometimes I love this game so much. Like, how can you do this to me? Now I have to spend $300 more to actually play the game. And
No, but I'm not disagreeing. I'm just, I agree 100%.
They got him. They got him.
they got us for sure. Moving on.
honestly,
yeah, go ahead.
just a thing. Honestly, I think you're not as disappointed as the guys that were waiting for a new Half-Life game and just only to be surprised
I
with
was
Half-Life
thinking the
Alex.
same thing.
It's like
Alex.
I want to believe.
guy-
Yeah, it's like it's a whole conspiracy theory on its own. It's
Yep.
I don't know if you guys watched the Valve documentary for the Half-Life games. Jeff Keighley was basically the producer of it, and he basically showed that from Half-Life 2 Episode 2 till now, they have canceled around 6 games. Basically a game like they designed it, they basically figured out something, and they're like they reached some point, they're like, okay, we're gonna sack this project, we're not gonna work on it. So 6 games,
It's not gonna be worth it. Yeah.
basically. So 6 games since Episode 2 Half-Life till Alex, all that time spent not actually producing something, it keeps you thinking. It's like, what is Gabe thinking, really?
I think uh, th- I think that businesses try to be a little bit smart
Mhm.
with their decisions,
Mhm.
and I don't think that canceling six games is good to any company, um, unless there is a valid reason behind it, because then they have to also answer to shareholders,
Mhm. Yeah.
and there has to be a really good reason to cancel those games.
Mhm.
A good example would be Duke Nukem. Okay, how long has that game been in development?
I don't know.
And then when they
I'm
just
not
released the
aware
game,
if it's still in
it didn't
development.
it didn't live up. Duke Nukem was released actually.
Mhm.
It, it
Was it?
it took around 14 years to develop the sequel. Yep, it got released. It didn't pan out well. Yeah.
Wow. Duke
And the
Nukem is
game was
actually the
built from the
first.
ground up 3 times.
What? What? Like, oh my god.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated
So
right now.
I think sometimes the development costs of a game are far less than the marketing costs of a game. And then you go into the issue of ruining the value of your IP.
Mhm.
So let's say you have a really good and successful game, and the case that happened with Crash Bandicoot.
Yep.
Game 1, 2, 3 were amazing, developed by Naughty Dog, owned by Universal Studios. Universal Studios took the IP. They tried to create two more games, okay, and a few and basically Crash Team Racing clone, which was labeled Crash Team Racing 2, and it failed. It devalued the IP to a point where they wish that they didn't do anything with that IP and retained its value. Um, so maybe they figured out during the development that okay, they were onto something, but it wasn't up to the expectations of players, or it wasn't up to the technologies of that time. So
Mhm.
maybe that's what happened, and you never know.
Yeah.
But it is a disappointing fact.
Yeah. Duke Nukem was actually the first PS1 game that I played. Imagine the first game as a kid, Duke Nukem. Childhood ruined, يعني. ف um,
You won it.
one of my childhood. uh, okay, let's move on to the next one. Nvidia to acquire processor and software design company ARM for $40 billion. For
Yep.
those who don't know who ARM is, ARM is a chip producing company, and their chips are usually used in TVs, any appliance that would require sort of a graphic chip, other than computers, for whatever reason. Like their capacity was like, okay, like we're just gonna make it for small monitors and small scale stuff, but they kind of got a bigger market for that. Um, so it's interesting that Nvidia is moving that way. They're like total world domination. Yani PCs are not enough for them. They're like, we're just gonna go and get everything right now. Um, Apart from like how they're gonna pay it and whatever, yani, what do you think, Yousef, about this kind of merger, and what can we expect for the future of such thing?
Well, well, I think NVIDIA realized the potential of acquiring new technologies instead of actually inventing them when they did the new 30 series devices. I mean, they're listing their they're listing their 30 series at a far less cost than the 20 series.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, they were able to acquire new technology thanks to
Mm-hmm.
their partnership with Samsung. And I'm sure that they're seeing a big value with ARM, because what is really interesting is um, ARM is actually owned, or should I say, SoftBank owns a big share of ARM, And for those of you who don't know what SoftBank is, basically it's one of the biggest investment firms in the technology field ever. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
SoftBank recently got around, I think it was 40 billion in investments from Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi. So these types of, yeah, it's a very big it's a very big name in the IT field. But, and I'm sure ARM at one point is actually worth the investment, especially with the way that NVIDIA is actually moving up with its investment potential.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at the article, what I'm seeing here is that they're basically not paying that entire 40 billion upfront.
Yeah.
They're paying 21.5 billion in stocks. Okay, and that shows that it's also about future investment rather than current investment in the company itself.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very smart move by NVIDIA, because they're saying, okay, we're going to buy the company, we're going to buy this technology, we're going to buy everything that it is connected to. Okay, and because we're going to do that. Okay, we're not going to take it all outright. We're also going to leave you to also invest and make this company grow with us. I think this is a great move, and I think this is preparing us for the new 40 series, which will come maybe in 2 years from today.
Do you think it's gonna take 2 years? Adi, NVIDIA, they decide middle 2021, they have a new card ready. So I'm not surprised. I'm really not surprised.
See, I think with the rough year that everybody's having with 2020, everybody's got to take a vacation in 2021. Okay.
Business
Yeah.
owners would disagree so much with you, so it's not even funny. It's like, you're already on vacation. What are you talking about? All right, moving on. Sony denies rumors that PS5 production has been cut over chip manufacturing issues.
Yep.
I mean, I think we've mentioned this before the stream, like briefly. Like COVID-19 has made it a challenge for everybody to basically go about their business, and producing PS5s, even if it's let's just face it, producing consoles is a sort of a lost business. I mean, like, you're not making the console because you want to sell the console. You make the console because you want to sell whatever games are on your platform, right? So having the difficulty of delivering sort of the platform to the user because of other issues is definitely going to affect them in the long run. And as of now, the Sony pre-order situation is, for the lack of a better word, it's a shit show. Like, people who pre-ordered are not gonna get it. People who pre-ordered got their pre-orders canceled. Basically, retailers who are accepting pre-order are canceling theirs because they didn't get confirmations from Sony, or like the wholesaler that's gonna give them the devices. So the whole situation is in shambles right now, and maybe that's one of the reasons, because they cannot produce more. But then again, like, how can you meet global demand? Like, video games are more important than ever. You know, like, you're stuck at home. Like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna eat and you're gonna play video games. Those are the two things that I do anyway. So they want to capitalize on that, but there are challenges that are gonna come with this. What do you think other challenges that Sony are gonna face in this period as well? Like, of course, they're getting their chip issues, they're getting their pre-order. I would say supply chain is not working very well. Do you see any other problems coming up as well?
Well, to be honest, yes. And because every launch that Sony had does not go as smooth as they would. I mean, if you want to go with history, I'm sure, Ali, you're familiar with the Nintendo issue that happened with Sony. Basically, Sony that came up and I think this was an E3 and just said that okay, we're partnering up with Nintendo to create a new gaming console
Mm-hmm. That was yeah.
with CD capabilities, and
Mm-hmm.
then Nintendo comes up after them and says, "No, we're not developing a new game console with Sony. We're developing it with Philips." Okay,
Yeah.
and that led to a big legal battle. And Sony just said, "You know what? Uh, we're gonna take that opportunity, and we're gonna create our own gaming console." And it dominated. It took games from Nintendo's mouth, so to
Yeah.
speak. Final Fantasy VII um, was supposed to be
Nintendo game.
Nintendo 64 exclusive,
Oh.
but Sony just convinced Squaresoft. Yep,
Interesting.
Sony convinced Squaresoft back then
Mm-hmm.
to transfer it over to CD because CD was allowed for a bigger storage medium, and it fitted the vision of Final Fantasy VII. Sony has been trying to capitalize on the distribution platforms because let's face it, the disruptions that happened in one of the biggest countries that actually produce and assemble electronic devices, China, got a huge disruption early in this year. And even the companies that used to function back in China had some issues. I'm well aware that if you've been following up on Chinese news, in June and July, there were a series of fires in very big tech companies in China.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was basically due to the disruption and due to the lockdowns, those companies went under. And in order to basically recover some of their losses, they had the insurance to pay for those.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that forced Sony to go and look for different areas of manufacturers to develop their games, to
Mm-hmm.
develop their consoles. But that being said, the initial forecast for the first 4 months of the PlayStation release was supposed to be 4 million consoles only.
Another
Okay, and you're
another
talking
promising,
about
and now they're promising around 11. Was it 11
yeah,
million?
yeah. Then they raised it up to 10 million, and then they raised it up to 13 million, which will cause a big scarcity in the market. A lot of people are gonna buy the PlayStation 5s, and a lot of people are gonna sell the PlayStation 5s in the black market. So
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna be out of Sony's hands. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I remember back in the PlayStation 2 days when they first came out, a PlayStation 2 cost around 160, 180 dinars. It was sold at the black market from upwards of 800 to 1,200 dinars.
Wow.
Yeah, there are people that are willing to pay that amount. So
Mm-hmm.
that supply and demand thing is going to be there. Um, I think also there's another issue with every new console. A month or two down the line, you will find issues
Mm-hmm.
either with the boards, basically the main console itself, or issues
Yeah.
with the controllers and.
Glitching.
However, I don't think, yeah, the infamous uh, yellow light that PlayStation 3 had in the beginning was due to something very stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the EU issued a new standard for companies that actually developed certain chipsets, stating that the heat sink gel that is between the processor and the thing that would reduce the heat of a processor
Mm-hmm.
should utilize a very specific, between the processor pins and the processor itself, there has to be some sort of welding, should use a very specific eco-friendly formula, okay? And turned out that that formula did not withstand the heat of the PlayStation 3. That's why you got that yellow light.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes small changes in a new device can actually create some issues. So I think currently Sony has the control over things, but after the devices being sold in the market and people try them out, we'll be seeing issues in manufacturing.
Mm-hmm. Oh well, I mean, like as you said, it's something that's so common that happens with any generation of console. You don't buy the first version, you buy the second version. But there are collectors out there that's like, you know what, I got the first version of it, and you know what, that's their thing. I'm not gonna bash that at all. Um,
Mm.
all right, this is the last line of news that I have because the one that I have, was already addressed earlier. Razer apologizes for exposing 100,000 customers' personal data. I understand, Yousef, that you're a Razer boy. Is that is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Were you one of them?
I honestly did not check, but yeah, I am a Razer guy. And believe it or not, I've had my Razer products for 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I decided to register them last month. So, so I think I've been one of those that got affected. But
Mm-hmm.
all in all, يعني, these things happen. I mean, you've got websites like sorry, you've got companies like Sony
Mm-hmm.
that had breaches. You remember the 2012 breach of Sony that actually saw the entire the head of division of Sony bow down to the people and say we're sorry for this mistake and stuff like that. I mean, these breaches happen, and when they get exposed, a lot of people go into panic and they want just to fix things up.
Mm-hmm.
But um, there are ways where you can actually go and check if any of your accounts have been hacked. I don't know if you guys know that, but if you go to Google and basically just type in Google, open up Google and say just Google user ID password check. Okay, a
Mm-hmm.
link will show up. Type in the email that you always use, and it will show you every website that has been hacked and basically exposed your email ID information and password. Funny enough, 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I went to I used that service, and Talabat was hacked.
What? Who
You
would hack
know,
Talabat?
yeah, Talabat was hacked. My
Okay.
email, basically, someone hacked Talabat, and and my personal data, email, password, and my also addresses. I'm luckily my credit card data was safe, but all of that was exposed, and it's being sold in the black market at the moment. So what I respect is that these companies have these policies that expose uh, that they've been hacked, and they inform their clients that okay, your accounts have been compromised. Go
Mm-hmm.
ahead, update them, change the passwords, and make sure that you're safe. And we apologize for something like this. I mean, that's the dangers of a digital world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was
And
thinking about it. Why would someone hack Bolabot? They want to know how many burgers I eat every day.
Those judgmental people, man. I swear to God.
Well, the main reason for it, right, is if they can find out what password you use on Talabat and you use
I
it
know.
on email.
I was just
Yeah.
making a joke out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's the thing though. Like with Razer, I just want to like see. Okay, apart from the credit card number, which is like the ideal thing to get, um, like, are they gonna benefit from like the order, like what you ordered from them? I mean, I know all Razer boys order the keyboards and the mouses, and now the the pads are RGB as well, so that's something else that they order.
In general, I always get because I have problems with my wrists from
Mhm.
so much gaming.
Mhm.
So I always get the most comfortable mouse I can find, which right now is a Razer mouse.
Oh, that's cool.
And the keyboard that I get, I really don't care about at all, which is why I bought like a bulk set of like 5 keyboards for 50 dirhams,
Okay.
which is about $15
Mhm.
for 5 keyboards.
Nice.
Wow.
And
Uh,
I go through about one a year, but it doesn't matter, right? Because you just throw it away and get another one out the box.
yeah, but that's the thing
Um,
though. Like, for me, like, I use Logitech because I grew up with Logitech. It's always around. It's reliable. And what happened with Logitech is they have this feature called Light Sync, so you can sync up the lights from your keyboard, your mouse, your sound system, all in one place. And Razer is doing the same thing. Um, but Razer, like I gotta give credit where credit is due. Razer has done so many big leaps in terms of gaming. Like when they created the Naga, and they created the Orb Weaver. Um, those things have like shaped MMOs in a different way. You know, like the way you play an MMO is certainly like not what it used to be. So I do give them credit for that. However, their market practice, or like the way they sell their products, I'm not a fan of that at all. And the quality, um, I'm like I had a keyboard and a mouse from Razer, and it didn't last me through a year. Like literally a year, and decided
Wow.
to shut off. So that's why I'm not a big fan of Razer. But yeah, I mean, like it happens every day when basically, a hacker exposes the information of a platform. But like, what do you think in terms of like security for yourself? Like, how can you safeguard yourself from such things? Like, I know we're gonna like go to the big like buy from the big giants like Amazon and whoever, and like they're gonna keep our data safe, but like they're not even safe from those kind of practices. Like they might even like get hacked, but they won't admit to it. Um, so I don't know. It's a very scary world out there.
I mean, making sure that you do use different passwords on every platform does tend to isolate the incident, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they get your credit card information, that's something separate. You can't really do anything about that at that point, other than cancel your cards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But if you can essentially isolate each password into its own bracket, that's kind of your best bet. I remember finding out that one of my passwords had been accessed
Mm-hmm.
a while ago, and it was such a hassle because it was one of the ones I use for multiple things. So then, if you do have to change it, you have to change it on so much, right?
Yeah.
And it was all for. I don't use it for important things. So, for example, my bank account, my online banking stuff, I will use a password independent for that, and I won't use it for anything else.
Yeah.
But this was like, actually, I think it was like Talabat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Talabat, right? I use it for that, and I use the same password for a lot of other, just like either a food ordering service or just like an account which I had to make in order to see something or something like that. Those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those use that generic password that, for most part, is throwaway. And then once it gets accessed, you then have to remember, first of all the things you use that password for, and then go through them and change them, which is a real hassle.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you have an independent password for each thing, then if that gets hacked, you change the password there, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Oh well. Well, I hope nobody falls into such an unfortunate situation. It's just a lot of hassle. Well, that brings us to the end of our stream today. Thank you
I think
guys. So, Yousef, you have something to say? Yousef?
no, no, actually, just wanted to say that just wanted to say something that's a
Mhm.
little bit out there. But would these security breaches create any type of mistrust between you and that company down the line,
Absolutely.
or would you continue to depend on those on those companies? Yep. I mean, and looking into the new policies that were mentioned earlier with Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
okay, basically Oculus is requiring you to use Facebook to log into their accounts. A lot of companies are doing that. They're forcing you to go into that direction. And with something like that, something that critical,
Mm-hmm.
if you lose access to it, what's going to happen? You're going to basically lose everything. That's the dangers of a digital identity. You can't verify the hacker. It's basically account theft, and everything just goes away with that. So I think, tying in with what we discussed earlier, going digital has its benefits, but when it's being handled in such a situation, it does cause an issue. It's not only personal data, it's also about the investment that you've made with those companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that's the only thing that I wanted to add there.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Ali?
about trust, I'll just say it's exactly what we were talking about earlier, where
I said what?
where we were talking about not wanting to give Facebook account information, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But then as soon as Splinter Cell is available on it, you'll still do it begrudgingly. And even with this Talabat hack,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
even if it was Talabat, that's the reason that I had to go and change all my passwords.
I'm still gonna use it.
I'm still gonna order from them as soon as this stream is done. Because I'm hungry and I haven't had dinner yet, right? That's
it is a reality
Yep.
of the situation. You're right. Well, thank you guys so much. And really, guys, whoever's watching, check out Gulf Role Playing Community's Facebook page. We just said Facebook page. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Um, and check out the news. And if you're interested in joining or like trying to find people who are interested in role playing tabletops, I don't know how you guys announce your, like campaigns or sessions or things like that. So do you post about them, or do you basically create an event on the community and people can just like attend or whatever?
Well, the community is mainly there for people to talk to each other, and then they'll tend to branch off and do their own thing, right?
Gotcha.
So we
Okay.
have games that are arranged on Discord, we have games that are arranged on Facebook, we have games that are arranged just in person or by email.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times they'll be announced on the Facebook page if they're looking for new players or something like that. All people will show up to the conventions and basically advertise there. So those are the main ways I think that we get people into games. But like I said, it's the Facebook group is mainly there for people to
Connect.
kind of get together, and then from there they can take it how they like it.
All right, great. Want to bring up something else before we end the stream? The Unreal Bahrain monthly challenge for September. If you guys are still out there and you haven't heard about this, I talked about it last week. It's this week as well. Until the end of the month, of course, for you to submit your entries for the challenge. This month's challenge is called Infection. It's about basically the effect of COVID-19 and how can we basically put it in I wouldn't say a product, in a design or in a model that you can submit for the challenge.
Great.
Yeah. So if you guys are still out there and you can shoot an entry, would be really appreciated. And with that, we're at the end of the stream. Thank you so much, guys. Omar, Ismail, a pleasure to meet you. And definitely, I'm gonna try to hit you up again for more about the masquerade. I think you know a lot that I need to know about. So definitely happening in the future. And Nasser Alawi, thank you so much for arranging half of this, of course.
Oh, it's always great to be a part of Unreal events, Unreal Bahrain events.
As you guys know, this stream happens every Saturday, so it happens at 6 p.m. So if you guys are free on a Saturday at 6 p.m., you know where to tune in. And with that, I bid you farewell and a good night.